Chapter 28. Alvin Danny felt that his life was quite comfortable. He was 40 years old this year, born in Rose. He had red hair, and was a standard local. In his early years, he traveled around the world with a caravan. After becoming an outstanding businessman at the age of 30, he returned to Rose, and was entrusted with a heavy responsibility. Now he was the Akate City branch president of the Sorofia Chamber of Commerce. As one of the branch presidents of the Sorofia Chamber of Commerce in the Papal Kingdom, Alvin's status was not low. Even some of the nobles at the bottom could not compare with him. Of course, the person who could be received by him must have a high status. For example, this person now, Master Luoya. The 2 pieces of clothes you ordered will take about half a month to be delivered. By then, our people will personally send them to the Marquis Mansion. As for the dagger you requested, I'm afraid it will take longer, about 3 months. In a beautifully decorated room, Alvin explained the situation to the cute and handsome little boy in a black coat opposite him with a smile on his face. His kind and peaceful attitude was worthy of the title of branch president. The top Sigung black tea in the tea set on the table emitted a faint fragrance. With the exquisite tea set of Rose, it had a different style. Luoya leaned on the soft sofa and took a sip of tea. He raised his eyes and praised lightly. The tea is good. Haha, of course, I have to use the best tea to entertain you. I'm usually reluctant to drink this Sigung tea. Ehe, who are you trying to fool? Luoya smiled, but he disdained this remark in his heart. Sorofia was famous for being rich. How could a branch president not be able to afford tea? What's the difference between this and old 8 starving to death in the toilet? Elevate the other party's identity, hold up the other party's face, and wait for the other party's sense of superiority to make a big profit. In this way, the nobles who loved their face would generally swallow their teeth and bite the bullet. This set of leek harvesting method could be said to be the usual method of these businessmen. Immature young people with high self-esteem were particularly easy to fall for it. Unfortunately, Luoya was not included in these people. Good words, but old 8, don't try to fool me. The young man put down the teacup and did not answer Alvin's words. He thought for a moment and said, well, it doesn't matter. There's still time for 3 months. However, these are all trivial matters. I'm not talking to you alone to confirm these things. I understand. Young Master Luoya, if you have any requests, please feel free to tell us. We can prepare them for you. Alvin chuckled, looking kind and helpful, but a layer of disgust had already welled up in his heart. It was also a shady business. She had long heard that Marquis Kadia's son was ignorant and incompetent. She didn't expect him to be involved in such a shady business at such a young age. Let me guess what it is. Hallucinogenic grass or happy beet. Or was it a woman? Alvin thought for a while and decided to fool this young thug. Although the Sorofia Chamber of Commerce had some connections, it was forbidden to sell them. If Roja was already a marquis, then he could sell a few of them. But now he was just an heir. Marquis Kadia was a model noble and a powerful wizard. He would not allow his son to be involved in these things. If he were to investigate, Alvin would definitely be in trouble. The middle-aged man thought of this and smiled without saying a word. He did not expect to hear another matter. I want to sell you an item on the purchase list. Purchase items? Alvin blinked. He did not expect this young master to be here to sell something. However, it was only for a moment. After a second or two, Alvin returned to normal. Or rather, his smile deepened. I see. Then which item do you want to sell? Number 172. It has the effect of calming the soul. It can suppress the corrosion of curse power and prevent items from becoming undead. Luoya said this sentence calmly. Alvin, who was about to open the list, stopped. His eyes that were focused on the new product collection suddenly shrank. Haha, you have a good memory. Well, there is indeed such an item in urgent purchase. Alvin pretended to flip through the list, but his heart was different from his appearance. Outsiders did not know the buyer of this purchase item, but Alvin, as the branch manager, knew very well. This purchase was issued by the Rose's main store, which meant that the person who wanted number 172 was probably a big shot from the main store. A dispensable transaction suddenly became a transaction that might be related to Alvin's future. The contrast between before and after made the middle-aged merchant's expression suddenly become serious. Young Master Luoya, where is your item? It's still at home. I will come again tomorrow. If our deal is done, I will naturally bring it to you. Chapter 29. 50,000 gold coins. The middle-aged merchant in the reception room was shocked when he heard this number. The burning flame in his heart was like being splashed with a basin of cold water. He looked at Luoya, who was asking for an exorbitant price. He wanted to refute his ridiculous price on the spot, but when he thought of what he said before, he held back his words. That, young Master Luoya, you may not know the market price. This price is really too high. Alvin rubbed his hands and smiled awkwardly. 50,000 gold coins. This is more than enough to buy a house in the holy capital. It's really too high for an item. Even a full set of inscription armor can't be sold at such a high price. Inscription armor? How can that kind of thing be compared with our family's item? Luoya frowned when he heard Alvin's words. He fully displayed his reputation as a thug. He immediately slammed the table and said angrily, how can that kind of trash that people can make now be compared with our family's treasure? Father said that this is a unique item, and the price is at least tens of thousands. Luoya pulled out the banner of Kadia to shut Alvin's mouth. Seeing this, the middle-aged merchant eagerly said, but we haven't seen your item yet. Such a high price is really. Roja made a solemn vow to use the honor of the Akate clan to endorse the Requiem lamp. Seeing this, President Alvin thought. Originally, the price of item 172 was estimated to be between 0 and 20,000 gold coins. But Sorofia had a rule. That was, the branch that received the item could earn a bonus for the difference in price. This was to encourage the other branches to take action. So the branch could only offer a price of 15,000 gold coins at most. However, considering Luoya's situation this time, Alvin decided to pay a little. He thought for a while and said, I think 18,000 gold coins is more appropriate. What do you think, young Master Luoya? Alvin looked at the young man opposite him, who didn't seem to understand the business rules at all. He was worried that the huge price difference would make him unhappy. However, he didn't expect Luoya to put down the teacup and walk out without saying a word. Wait, young Master Luoya. What are you doing? Alvin, who had been a traveling merchant for half his life, quickly stepped forward and stopped in front of the black-haired youth. Upon seeing this, Luoya said indifferently, Mr. Alvin, I doubt your sincerity now. The price you offered is not even half of mine. Young Master Luoya, your price is really too high. 18,000 gold coins is really our limit. Alvin's wrinkled old face looked extremely sincere, like a poor leek that didn't earn a penny. Luoya glanced at him and nodded with a smile. Damn it, do you really think I'm that easy to harvest? Today, I will let you experience the sharpness of the feudal scythe. So that's how it is. Looks like the Sorofia branch in Akate City is still not big enough. What? With a slightly disappointed expression on his face, Luoya reached out and patted Alvin's chest. President Alvin, I know that your branch's financial resources are limited, so I won't make it difficult for you. I will go to the Holy Capital for Her Royal Highness' birthday party in a while. I believe that the Sorofia branch in the Holy Capital should meet my needs. Luoya's words made Alvin's eyes widen, and then cold sweat dripped down his back. Wait, this isn't right. If what Luoya said was true, then Alvin was about to lose not only 2 sales that would make anyone envious, but also his evaluation in the entire Chamber of Commerce. The Holy Capital's theocracy headquarters was actually only half a level higher than Alvin, but they were indeed much richer than him. Considering Luoya's situation, the Holy Capital's theocracy headquarters was likely to accept his things, and then add fuel to the fire in the report to smear Alvin's internal competitor. Marquis Akate didn't sell things in Akate City, but went to the Holy Capital instead. Is it because he likes to ride carriages? The headquarters couldn't even receive the things they urgently needed. Isn't this a problem? Not only would he fail to earn any merits, but he would also be criticized for being incompetent. This was something that Arvin could not accept no matter what, especially since the president of the Holy Capital's main store was an old friend of his. He had received a lot of care from the president when he was young. Thinking of this, the president gritted his teeth and gestured with his hand. Young Master Luoya, don't get too excited. How about this? I can make a promise. If there is no problem with the things, I am willing to pay 25,000 gold coins. Chapter 30. A week later, in Luoya's room, the black-haired boy was looking at 2 winter coats. These 2 coats were one big and one small. The big one was for men, and the female one was for children. There was no doubt that these were the clothes that Luoya personally went to the Sorofia Chamber of Commerce to order a week ago. But it was worth mentioning that this much bigger men's coat was not for Luoya, but for Kadia. When buying the clothes, Luoya recalled his memory and found that Luoya had not bought anything for Kadia in the past 10 years. Thinking of this, Luoya, who happened to make a profit, paid for a coat out of his own money to express his gratitude to his cheap father. Due to the transaction between Luoya and Alvin, the branch president paid a lot of attention to Luoya's affairs. The clothes that were originally planned to take half a month to complete were delivered in a week. Of course, Luoya did not go to the extent of checking the clothes. In fact, he was looking at the golden piece under the clothes. Gold coins, or the final payment of the transaction a week ago, were a total of 20,000. A week ago, after Luoya got the deposit and returned home, he opened the box and spent money on the spot. He used the system to exchange for Sanswoma's Requiem lamp. It was a strange oil lamp that seemed to be made of mud. It was brownish-black, and the flame was pure white. He did not know what the dark red lamp oil was made of. After igniting it, there was a strange feeling of calmness. Luoya handed the Requiem lamp to Alvin the next day. After a series of tests, the president was overjoyed, claiming that the treasure brought by Luoya perfectly met or even exceeded their standards. Alvin, who thought that this was the heirloom of the Akot family, was glad that he was decisive yesterday. His attitude toward Luoya was closer, and he said that he would find a way to secretly send the final payment as soon as possible. Well, it's really fast. Luoya grabbed a handful of gold coins and marveled at President Alvin's speed. Considering that the item probably had to be sent to the headquarters of the Rosetta Sorofia Chamber of Commerce, and then they had to contact the buyer to pay the balance. 1 week was simply too fast. Originally, I only needed 1,000 gold coins to purchase the limited-time discount item, but I didn't expect to end up with a price of 25,000 gold coins. After deducting the 5,000 gold coins used to exchange for the Requiem lamp, I still had a total of 20,000 gold coins. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this was a huge sum of money. It was more than enough to buy a decent house in the holy capital. The Akot family was one of the 5 great noble families. If their territories and other assets were included, their assets would be close to 10 million gold coins. However, these were all fixed assets. Just like how no noble would sell their city walls, the money they could take out directly was probably only a few 100,000 to 1,000,000 gold coins. From the looks of it, Luoya could be said to have reached the wealthy class in one step. Unfortunately, no matter how much money he had, in order to become stronger, he had to become a rich sow of the system. Thinking of this, the money grubber Luoya's heart was filled with sorrow. However, as the saying went, there were gains and losses. He had never forgotten why he had worked so hard. Compared to his life, no matter how much money he had, it was nothing. Besides, if he was strong, why would he be afraid of not having enough money? After mentally preparing himself, Luoya pinched his hand and lifted the pile of gold coins that were emitting a charming golden light. He put the 2 money boxes into his storage cabinet and sent the clothes to Ai Lizi and Kadia first. Not to mention anything else, it was important to first gain a wave of favorability. Besides, Kadia was on leave today. If he didn't send the clothes to her, he would have to wait for another week. Luoya first went to Ai Lizi's room. Today the girl had an etiquette class, which was slightly exhausting. At the moment she was resting. Luoya's arrival made Ai Lizi smile immediately. "Good morning, elder brother." Ai Lizi, who had just finished her etiquette class, gave a dignified and elegant salute. Her cute appearance made Luoya couldn't help but smile. "Good morning, Ai Lizi. You must be tired from class. This is for you." Luoya waved his hand, Behind him, Anna immediately stepped forward and handed over a beautifully decorated wooden box. It was a special gift box with the Sorofia Chamber of Commerce's logo engraved on it and the designer's autograph. The appearance was very good. The inside was also sprayed with Sorofia's exclusive perfume. It could be said that it was a chain promotion. Who thought of the sales method? It was a talent. Luoya sighed. AI Lizzie was pleasantly surprised. Sorofia's custom-made clothes were not cheap, but the exquisite and unique design was irresistible to any girl. Even the sensible AI Lizzie was the same. Elder brother Luoya, this is? I haven't given you a gift since you came to Akat's house. This is to make up for it. Thank you. I like it very much. The pleasantly surprised AI Lizzie threw herself into Luoya's arms. Her small face intimately rubbed against the youth's chest like a silver kitten. Immediately, large numbers appeared above her head. The nearby maids saw this scene and smiled. Their heads also glowed with green light. Especially Anna. The numbers were very impressive. However, Luoya didn't care about this anymore. Being hugged by AI Lizzie, the youth felt the girl's closeness. A kind of healing feeling surged from the depths of his heart. So cute, really so cute. It feels like I'm alive again. Luoya, who had been working hard to raise money and exercise recently, finally relaxed. He felt that the money spent on this hug was worth it. After being intimate with Luoya for a while, AI Lizzie was called back to continue her lesson. After the youth said goodbye to her, he knocked on his father's door. What he didn't expect was that this time, the noise was even bigger than AI Lizzie's. When Luoya said that he had bought Kadia a set of clothes and handed the wooden box to him, the Marquis actually cried. Maria, you can rest assured. The child is sensible now. He even bought me a gift. Chapter 31. What do I need to do before drinking the medicine? Luoya wasn't too sure about this question. In his previous life, the emperors had to take a bath and burn incense before swallowing mercury and waiting for death. However, in this world, these steps did not seem to be necessary. This medicine was so dark that no god would dare to bless it. Besides, this medicine was both a strengthening agent and a buffering agent. It obviously had the smell of black technology. Forget it, I'll just drink it. Luoya held the Biolo Physique Modifier Type 2 that he exchanged for with 1,000 gold coins. It looked black like oil. He glanced at the slightly better-looking dark blue Biolo high-heat buffering agent. He opened the lid and slowly poured the two into the glass. What surprised Luoya was that the black oil was very smooth. On the other hand, the dark blue buffering agent was very slow. It was like jelly. After the two were mixed together, they started to bubble. Luoya followed the system's instructions and observed the color. Let it sit until it turns brownish red before drinking. Luoya muttered the standard and sat down to wait. Time passed slowly. After about 10 minutes, the liquid in the glass finally turned brownish red. The bubbles disappeared. Luoya picked up the glass and smelled it. He actually smelled something like orange juice. System, is this considered complete? Can I drink it? Scanning item, color matches. Reaction is sufficient. Confirmed consumption. That's good. But this texture is similar to milk, but it's orange? It still feels weird. Forget it, cheers. After the system confirmed, Luoya shook the glass twice and gritted his teeth. Then, he raised his head and poured the 1,000 gold coin worth of the medicine into his mouth. It felt a little sticky and had a weird taste. But there was indeed a faint orange taste. The temperature was normal. This was probably Luoya's impression of this expensive medicine. But as the saying goes, don't look at the taste but look at the effect. After drinking the medicine, Luoya closed his eyes and felt his body. Then he didn't find anything strange. What's going on? Where's the promised power? System, isn't there any reaction? 1,000 gold coins can't even make a sound. Ugh. Halfway through his sentence, the young man's body trembled. Suddenly, he felt a scorching heat spreading from his stomach to his body. In just a few seconds, it had spread throughout his entire body. Luoya could feel that his body temperature was rapidly rising. Due to the high fever, his brain was also beginning to become groggy. He struggled to take a few steps to lie down on the bed. But he did not expect that as soon as he took a step, his vision would turn black. Clang! The chair was knocked to the ground, next to its fallen owner. The sound of 1,000 gold coins, although late, had arrived. Saint Mestre's Luoya was on the verge of collapsing, but what he didn't know was that far away, the little requiem lamp had unknowingly changed the course of his life. It works. It really works. In a pitch-black room, a brown-haired middle-aged man was sitting on the main seat. On the table in front of him was a rustic oil lamp made of an unknown material. The oil lamp had already been lit up. The white light that was completely different from ordinary oil lamps illuminated the surroundings. For a moment, the exquisite hanging paintings, the priceless ancient books, and the flame-patterned grim collar were all revealed in the light. The light also illuminated the excited faces of the group in front of the table. "Mr. Bruce, how do you feel?" The effect is obvious. The corrosion has slowed down. No, it should be said that it has almost stopped. Sitting behind the table was a luxuriously dressed man. He stretched out his hand to touch his chest and felt it. After a moment he nodded his head. The agitation of the soul has disappeared, and the undying state has also subsided. The most miraculous thing is that there are no side effects. "Andrew, do you know what this is?" I have never heard of this before. But according to my observations, I can confirm that this is an antique from before the Third Era." Wearing a pointed hat and reading glasses, an old man with a grizzled beard took 2 steps forward. He carefully examined the requiem lamp. The material of this oil lamp is somewhat similar to mud. The lamp oil may be the blood of some creature. It is definitely a pagan item, but from the fact that there are no side effects, it should not be an evil item. It probably came from a civilization that disappeared in the Second Era. Can it be replicated? Chapter 32. Luoya had a dream. In the dream, he seemed to have been tied up by cannibals. First, he was put into the fridge, and then he was pulled out of the fridge and thrown into the frying pan. The heat was unbearable. Perhaps Luoya was thick-skinned, but after being thrown into the frying pan, he was sent back into the fridge to be frozen. After coming out of the fridge, he was thrown into the frying pan again. In the end, Luoya's consciousness was a little blurry. Only when he heard Diandians crying did Luoya gradually wake up. He slowly opened his heavy eyelids and saw a luxuriously decorated ceiling. "This place is..." Brother Luoya, you're finally awake." "Woo-woo. Ai Lizzie." The youth turned his head with some difficulty and saw a young girl throwing herself at him. When Ai Lizzie realized that Luoya had woken up, she cried loudly in his arms. No matter how hard he tried to persuade her, she couldn't stop crying. On the other side, when Anna realized that Luoya had woken up, she happily shouted to pass on the news. "Young master is awake." "That's great. I'll go inform master." The servants passed on the news. Not long after, the sound of running could be heard. A figure rushed in from the door. It was actually Kadia. "Luoya, you're finally awake. Do you feel any discomfort?" I don't feel any discomfort. I just feel a little weak." That's good. Kadia sighed in relief and nodded. Luoya comforted Ai Lizzie and chatted with his father for a while. Only then did he find out that he had slept for 3 days. No, to be precise, he had been sick for 3 days. 3 nights ago, the maid Anna was the first to discover Luoya lying beside the chair. At that time, his whole body was feverish and unconscious. Seeing this situation, Anna hurriedly reported it to Kadia. The Marquis, who was trying on clothes in the room, was shocked when he heard the news. Since then, he began to treat Luoya's temperature for 3 consecutive days. During this process, Luoya's cup and container were found. Kadia examined them and found that there was a kind of curse potion left in them. Thinking that someone wanted to assassinate his son, the Marquis completely sealed off the mansion and was ready to use spells to track down the real culprit. "There's no need for that. No one harmed me. I drank it myself." Luoya, who realized that things had gotten out of hand, hurriedly confessed. He said that he had accidentally found a set of medicine in the storeroom. The label was to strengthen the body. He had been practicing his swordsmanship hard recently, and in order to improve faster, he drank the medicine in a hurry. Luoya's words made everyone in the mansion heave a sigh of relief. Kadia, who realized that Luoya had asked for it, sternly reprimanded him. The things in the storeroom were left behind by generations of ancestors. How could you drink it indiscriminately? Moreover, many of the potions have a time limit. After the time limit, not only are they useless, they are even harmful. I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. He didn't expect that the golden partner would make Luoya bow his head and admit his mistake with a good attitude. Kadia didn't pursue the matter and left after a few words of advice. After dealing with Kadia, Luoya turned his head and began to appease Ai Lizi. Brother Luoya, I understand your thoughts, but please don't do this again. If the family needs extraordinary strength, although it may be useless, Ai Lizi will work hard. The silver-haired girl, who saw through Luoya's thoughts, said with tears streaming down her face. The boy's face stiffened, and he couldn't help but mutter in his heart. No, you're underestimating yourself. If you're useless, then there aren't many things in this world that are. Luoya, who was complaining in his heart, affirmed Ai Lizi's thoughts and promised that he wouldn't do such a thing again. Hearing these words, the girl's tears turned into laughter. The two of them stuck together for a while before separating. Luoya's serious illness made everyone in the Marquis mansion nervous. At the same time, it also made him feel for the first time that the few months of effort he had put in to recover his memories of his previous life had paid off. Kadia was his biological father, so there shouldn't be any changes. However, Ai Lizi's behavior was very different from the game's storyline. If it was the Luoyu of the past, Ai Lizi would at most greet him politely, without any emotional fluctuations in her heart. She wouldn't cry and wet his clothes. Young master, you've just recovered from a serious illness. Please change your clothes. Okay. Luoya, who was rubbing his chest, responded and took off his clothes and handed them to Anna. The maids were the same. If it was before, they might be worried that Luoya would lose his job because of his illness, but they definitely wouldn't look at him with such concern. Being a good person and doing good deeds had its rewards. At the very least, it made the mansion more humane. Chapter 33. In the backyard of the Marquis mansion, Luoya was swinging his sword at a wooden stake, an edgeless iron cudgel sword, a sturdy wooden figure, and a 10-year-old child. In the past, such a lineup would have been the scene of the youth waving his iron sword and hammering the wooden figure. But today was different. Boom! Luoya held the long sword in his hand and chopped down with all his strength. In less than 3 rounds, the wooden puppet died on the spot. The broken wooden stubble scattered all over the ground. Even the ordinary iron sword used for practice was slightly crooked. Without a doubt, killing a wooden puppet in 3 strikes was definitely not something an ordinary person could achieve. Not to mention using an unedged sword. It was already very good for an ordinary person to be able to split the wooden puppet in half. This is Source Rank 6, the system's evaluation of E rank. After completing the magnificent feat of destroying the wooden puppet, Luoya sheathed his sword and stood there. He felt the difference between the magical elements in his body and a few days ago. A week ago, Luoya spent a lot of money to exchange for a physique-improving medicine from the system. After taking it, he had a high fever and fell into a coma for 3 days. After waking up, he was forced to recuperate by Kadia, who was concerned about him. Thus, after recuperating for 3 days, Luoya regained his freedom and had time to test his progress. During these 3 days of recuperation, Luoya could feel the medicine in his body slowly being absorbed. The proof was that his spirit was getting stronger day by day. Sometimes he could not sleep at night. Moreover, his 5 senses had become much sharper, and his reaction speed had also been strengthened. Until this morning, when Luoya checked his status and found that the system's evaluation of him had reached E rank, he could not wait to test his skills. It had to be said that it was very fierce. If this sword was unedged, it might cut a person in half if they were not wearing any equipment. Luoya felt that this kind of strength was enough to go up the mountain and fight a tiger. However, although he said this, Luoya was not too proud. After all, the improving medicine only strengthened his physique and potential. Jumping directly to E rank was already the limit for a powerless guy like him. Deepening the degree of mutation of his body and advancing to Source Rank 5 was still up to him. Sigh. I might have to think of a way to raise money again. The youth thought of the 2 chests of gold coins he locked in the cupboard and shook his head. This was the first time he felt that he was really poor since his reincarnation. After all, there were very few geniuses like AI Lizzie. As the female lead of the game, she and Nua Iyer could both level up quickly. Due to their high-level bloodlines, they both had unique abilities that made it easier for them to practice. Although AI Lizzie was usually very obedient and would do whatever Luoya asked her to do, in fact, AI Lizzie should be stronger than the previous Luoya. Even if she was younger by 2 years, her talent in curses was still on par with Luoya. Of course, AI Lizzie was lacking in physical attack power. Her strength was in her recovery ability. Luoya was the traditional strong person who could create miracles, but his recovery ability was very average. After testing his body's abilities, Luoya started on the next project. After a long time, he once again picked up the spell book and began to advance the progress of his curses that hadn't been improved for many years. As everyone knew, basic curses were transitional curses before obtaining source substance. At source rank 7, it was basically invisible hand, micro heat wave, and other life skills that didn't have any attack power. They were usually used for trivial things like taking things out, drying clothes, and so on. However, at source rank 6, the situation was fundamentally different. At source rank 6, the magic essence in the body would start to influence the body. The upper limit of the curses would also skyrocket. At this level, the experienced militia would generally know a few good curses. What Luoya wanted to learn now was these practical things. After more than an hour of careful selection, Luoya found a few targets in Ka Dia's spell book. Concentrated explosion mobilized the magic essence in the body to concentrate on a specific part of the body. In a short period of time, greatly enhanced the strength, speed, and hardness of that part. It could be widely used for attack and defense. Curse power gloves use curse power to cover the hands. When you don't have a weapon, use it to resist the enemy's attack. The hardness of the curse power gloves was related to the nature of the curse power and had nothing to do with the amount of magic essence used. Balanced breathing, a special breathing technique. Using the magic essence in this technique could greatly save physical strength. The effect was significant in bitter and protracted battles. The above 3 were the source rank 6 basic curses that Luoya found by flipping through the book. At first glance, they were all skills that increased physical strength and fighting ability. It could be seen that in source rank 6, close combat and close combat were the main fighting methods. There were very few pure curses. The reason should be because the cost-performance ratio was too low. For example, this fire-spitting hand, the flames transformed from curse power, were difficult to harm in a short period of time, but it could be used as a feint. These kinds of tricks were basically the source rank 6 pure curse attacks in the book. Luoya basically didn't care about these. Unless he was stuck at source rank 6 for too long, he wouldn't spend time learning these flashy but useless things. After Luoya recovered, Ka Dia once again returned to the Night Order. This time, Ka Dia took a lot of leave to take care of him. She shouldn't be back in a short period of time. Luoya and AI Lizzie started their life together again. The following days were quite peaceful. Luoya, who obtained extraordinary strength for the first time in 2 lives, was very excited. He studied curses with all his might. His physical training also increased by several levels. His swordsmanship also improved a lot. He was finally no longer a weakling. AI Lizzie also worked hard during this time. It seemed that Luoya's serious illness stimulated her. After half a year, under the efforts of Luoya and Ka Dia, AI Lizzie had integrated into the family of only 2 people. She began to feel a sense of responsibility. She felt that as a member of the family, she had an obligation to do something for the family, especially when Luoya was judged to be unable to obtain extraordinary strength. Of course, the girl didn't know that her adopted brother was a gold sow. She forcefully paid for the ability. After the end of the autumn harvest, Luoya didn't have the duty of a temporary tax official. The youth who didn't have any use for the time being decided to put the matter of the territory aside and concentrate on improving his personal ability. Instead, farming AI Lizzie 3 times a day became a compulsory activity for Luoya. He had a lot of gains every time, and he found that recently, there were more and more maids farming AI Lizzie at the same time. Anna had been very happy during this period of time, protecting the young master and young lady, who were made in heaven with her friends. Every day was her greatest happiness recently. Every time the two of them showed their love, Anna would be very happy to be a couple on the spot. Under this stable and peaceful situation, autumn passed and winter came. Chapter 34. Just like that, the winter of the Akot territory came as the two of them studied hard. After a month of low temperatures, it finally snowed heavily in the territory. Looking at the snowy scenery outside, Luoya was a little excited. In such weather, people always wanted to go out and have a snowball fight. Even AI Lizzie, who had always been quiet, was a little excited. Unfortunately, there were only two people in the Marquis mansion, Luoya and AI Lizzie. Luoya couldn't bring himself to have a snowball fight, so the two of them had no choice but to make a little snowman. As the saying goes, a timely snow indicates a good harvest. This year's snowfall would become a spring water source to nourish the earth. Therefore, Luoya and AI Lizzie weren't the only ones who were happy about the snowfall. The farmers in the villages outside the city were also happy. The snow continued on and off for a few days. After it stopped, Kadia finally found a chance to go home. Recently, the Marquis seemed to be very busy. Even when he returned to Akot City, he didn't stay idle. In the limited time he had, he led the militia and soldiers into the mountains to start a winter hunt. The winter hunt was a must-have event in every territory. In the past, when everything withered in winter, people often lacked clothes and food. At this time, the local nobles would call the men who were idle at home because of the season to hunt in the mountains to supplement their living expenses. The meat of the hunted could be eaten, and the skin could be made into clothes. It was a way to alleviate the difficulties of winter every year. However, now that the times had changed, people didn't have to go hungry in winter. Therefore, the hunt became more of a festive event. Luoya wasn't old enough this year, and he didn't want to leave AI Lizzie alone at home, so he didn't participate in this activity. Kadia went into the mountains for 3 days, and on the 4th day, he brought a deer head back for Luoya. What the hell is this? This was Luoya's first thought when he saw the table-sized deer head. To be honest, he was really shocked. The deer head that Kadia brought back was comparable to the elephant head in Luoya's previous life. Not only was it big, but it was also very ferocious. The first was the teeth. The 3 rows of sharp teeth were obviously not herbivores. The second was the antlers. This giant deer's antlers were grayish-black at the base, and the top was bright red like blood. In the dark, it even emitted a little blood-red light. Even though Luoya was already dead, he still felt a deep sense of oppression. It could be said that its appearance was very ferocious. This is a bloodhorn deer that has mutated by absorbing magic essence. It's a carnivorous beast. It's quite rare to see one this big. This is the biggest harvest of this winter hunt. Fortunately, I encountered it this time. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if it came out of the mountains and hurt people in the winter. Kadia stroked the huge deer head with a look of joy. This made Luoya quite speechless. At the same time, he also recognized Kadia's strength as the chief wizard of the knights. Father, how strong is this deer? This deer, an ordinary bloodhorn deer, is about the 4th level of source rank. This one is too big, and the curse on its 2 horns is also very strong, so it should be close to the 3rd level of source rank. It can be considered a pseudo-level 3 monster. So it's like this, I understand. Luoya looked at Kadia with a little deep meaning. Although his father never talked about his strength, judging from this incident, even if there were soldiers cooperating with the encirclement and suppression, he should be at least above the 3rd level of source rank. After guessing Kadia's strength, Luoya looked back to observe the elephant-like giant deer. The young man touched the antlers that were much thicker than his thighs, and suddenly felt that the world might not be as safe as he imagined. After the winter hunt, Kadia left again after a few days. He looked very busy with work. Luoya and AI Lizzie were used to it. Everything in the mansion was in order, until the arrival of a person brought some unexpected surprises to Luoya. President Alvin came to deliver the sword. After the business deal between Luoya and him 3 months ago, the two had not contacted each other. Luoya, who didn't want to sell things in the system, wanted to run away after cheating him, so he simply didn't go to Sorofia. But now that 3 months had passed, the custom-made short sword was completed, and Alvin came to visit himself. Alvin came with a smile. Luoya naturally couldn't kick him out for no reason, so he arranged to meet him in the reception room. But what he didn't expect was that Alvin's smile was not perfunctory. He was really happy. "Young Master Luoya, you've helped me a lot." Alvin excitedly held Luoya's hand, and the favorability value kept increasing, making the young man confused. Mr. President might have noticed Luoya's doubts, so he quickly suppressed the excitement in his heart and said, "The lamp you sold received the sincere gratitude of the buyer, and the effect was far beyond expectations. Luo Chet's main store recorded this as a great merit for me. Next year, I will go to the Holy Capital to serve as the president of the Theocracy headquarters. I'm really grateful to you and Lord Marquis." Alvin smiled with a red face, but Luoya blinked in surprise. He didn't expect that a lamp could let Alvin directly become the president of the Theocracy headquarters. This was a real important position. Wait, it seems that the effect of this lamp is beyond imagination. According to the principle of the butterfly effect, it may have changed a lot of people and things. Is this a blessing or a curse? Luoya frowned and thought for a long time. He felt that he didn't need to panic too much. In the original work, he was ganged up on and beaten to death as the big boss. Could it be worse than this? As for the impact, how can it affect me so easily? Luoya smiled, and threw this matter to the back of his mind in the blink of an eye. At this time, there were two new things in wooden boxes in front of him that attracted his attention. One was a beautifully shaped short sword. The scabbard was decorated with blackwood, gold and jade. The design followed the ancient style, and the blade inside was shining with a cold light. It was made of expensive ice iron, and the overall length was slightly short. It was a short sword that was specially made for young nobles. Obviously, the price was not cheap, and it was far more than the price Luoya offered at the time. This should be the automatic configuration for him by Alvin. The other was much simpler than the short sword. It was a neatly arranged box of gold coins. Luoya roughly looked at it, and there were at least thousands of gold coins. "Young Master Luoya, this is the 5,000 gold coins I brought this time to express my gratitude. Please accept it as a testimony of our friendship. When I work in the Holy Capital, you are welcome at any time." Alvin pushed the box over with a smile. Luoya looked at him and smiled. He naturally understood what the president's subtext was. He wanted to maintain the cooperation and become a dedicated buyer of Luoya's treasures. Luoya was not disgusted by Alvin's thoughts. Although this middle-aged man had the shrewdness of a businessman, he was not insatiable. He could have not mentioned the reason for his promotion and saved the 5,000 gold coins. But he chose to thank Luoya and return the favor by establishing a long-term cooperation. He was willing to give up and gain. He was a talent for daring to make such a big bet. Thinking of this, Luoya straightened up and reached out to hold the box full of gold coins. He smiled with satisfaction. "Deal." Chapter 35. Inside the carriage, a faint fragrance came from the fragrance wrapped in silk which filled the small space. The girl's breath was slightly hot. Roha opened his blurred eyes and saw the ceiling that he couldn't be more familiar with these past 3 days. Or rather, the carriage shed. It had been 2 months since winter. Luoya, who rarely went out all year round, welcomed a noble tradition that she had held every year since last year: the birthday party of the princess. In other words, she was going to celebrate Nua Ayer's birthday. As the only heir of the Heathcote family, Noelle had been a proud child since she was a child. She was doted on by her grandfather, the current Great Holy See John Heathcote. Therefore, Noelle's social debut last year was very grand, which was her birthday party. Debuting in the social circle was the same as an idol star. In fact, it was the first time a noble child attended a banquet. Before debuting, they would generally receive a complete etiquette education. When their parents felt that they were ready to meet people, they would find an opportunity to host a banquet and invite guests. Generally speaking, The most common time for a debut was the birthday party with the person who made the debut as the protagonist. It could be said that it was killing two birds with one stone. At the beginning of this year, the Ackett family also held a birthday party, which was quite grand. Of course, there was only one debut. Last year's birthday party was for her debut. This year's party, and every year's party were for other purposes. In Heathcliff's words, everyone should unite and deepen communication, so that they could lead the theocracy to a better future. In layman's terms, it was to build relationships and build relationships. Although Heathcliff was a member of the royal family, he still needed the support of the local nobles, especially the 5 great nobles of the theocracy hundreds of years ago. They were so powerful that even the royal family had to rope them in. As for the other small nobles, they had to visit the royal family in the holy capital every year to know what the head of the country looked like, how many people were in the family, and whether they were male or female, tall or short, fat or thin. Good friends my ass, Wuxia secretly complained in her heart. She sat up and looked out of the small window of the carriage. As the temperature continued to drop after winter, fewer and fewer people went out for activities, especially in the suburbs. Even the official road was deserted. There was still a lot of snow on the ground outside. Wuxia's carriage was a high-grade magically modified product in this world. Not to mention the shock absorption effect, it was very fast, almost like a normal horse. Even so, it took 3 days to travel from Ackett City to St. Lorraine, and that was under the condition that the official road was smooth and unobstructed. Last night and the night before, Wuxia and the others rested in the town, so their speed was slower. Originally, there were 2 carriages, one for Wuxia and the other for Ai Lizzie. However, because it was too boring, Ai Lizzie came to Wuxia directly. "Brother Wuxia, I'm so lonely. Come to me." Seeing the pitiful Ai Lizzie's cute appearance, Wuxia almost couldn't take it anymore. The 2 chatted, played chess, and played cards to make time pass a little better. When they were tired, they would lie together to rest and sleep. However, even so, after 3 days of riding in the carriage, Wuxia was a little restless. "Young master, we're almost there. Please hold on a little longer." Anna, who had become Wuxia's main source of affection for the past 2 days, because of Ai Lizzie's arrival, was sitting upright on a small chair opposite him. She was comforting the young man, who was rolling his eyes at the scenery outside. These 2 days, she often had an excited smile on her face. Even after 3 days, she was still full of energy. "I'm afraid that St. Lorraine is now full of nobles. Where are we going to stay?" The Ackett family has property in the holy capital. It was bought by the previous head of the family, and there have always been people cleaning it. "I see." After hearing Anna's words, Wuxia was relieved. The 2 chatted in a low voice. After more than an hour, the carriage driver outside reported that they had finally arrived at the holy capital after a 3-day journey. St. Lorraine, as the headquarters in front of the Heathcliff family, was quite majestic. This could be seen from the city walls. The walls of St. Lorraine were more than 10 meters tall, and were made of huge blocks of stone. They were white in color, and gave off a refreshing and holy feeling. The soldiers walking on the walls were fully equipped with armor, and looked very good. Of course, this was only the appearance. Although the walls were tall and deep, St. Lorraine had never experienced an invasion in its history. This was because this was the holy land of the Church of the Primordial Goddess, or Shia's followers. The followers of Shia had a widespread faith in the entire human society. So even if there was a rebellion, no one would attack this place. How strong were the soldiers who had never experienced war? There were many examples of this in the history of his previous life. In any case, Wuxia felt that the strength of these people was quite questionable. The carriage drove on the road, and the tall walls were getting closer and closer. The exquisite and luxurious noble carriage naturally attracted the attention of the people and soldiers, lining up to enter the city. What a beautiful carriage! Where did this noble come from? This must be a great noble. The people looked at the carriage in disgust, but the soldiers knew very well what they were looking for. "Look, that's the symbol. The candlelight eye, it's the Ackett family." "Ackett? Quick, open the side door, open the side door." Seeing the unique symbol of the Ackett family, The scout reported the result to the general in charge of the city gate. The general in charge of the city gate immediately shouted and opened the side door. The originally crowded crowd moved aside and looked at the carriage in awe. Chapter 36. The Labyrinth Pavilion, owned by the Akkad family, was a rather famous place in the holy capital. It was rumored that the Akkad family's house was not to be invaded. It was said that if one was welcomed into the Labyrinth Pavilion by the owner, then everything would return to normal. If one was not welcomed into the Labyrinth Pavilion, then a labyrinth would appear in front of the intruder, and they would never be able to leave. It was impossible to know where this rumor originated from, but the content of the rumor was enough to show the fear and respect of the unknown power that the Akkad adept family had held for a long time. And today, Wuxia was fortunate enough to visit such a famous scenic spot as soon as he arrived in the holy capital. He lived in it as the owner. "Father, is this rumor true?" Wuxia asked curiously as he looked at the clean and tidy building that was designed in a style that was more than 100 years old. Kadia smiled and led Wuxia and Ai Lizi into the study. He sat on a chair and began to tell them about the history of the family. This mansion was built by the head of the Akkad family 3 generations ago, my grandfather Ponte Akkad. It has a history of more than 170 years. Through Kadia, Wuxia and Ai Lizi heard about a history that was only recorded in the history books. Almost no one knew about it anymore. About 200 years ago, the royal family of the St. Mestre cult Heathcliff gave birth to a pair of twins. The boy's name was Vader Heathcliff, and the girl's name was Wei Dualia. Both siblings were gifted and had broken through to the 4th level of the source rank at a young age, becoming advanced extraordinary. Originally, this was a good thing for the Heathcliff family, but unexpectedly, Princess Wei Dualia discovered that her brother Vader was connected to an evil cult. As the successor to the Holy See, Vader was involved with a cult. This matter could be said to have subverted everyone's worldview. If it had been anyone else, they would have made this matter public immediately. However, the intelligent Wei Dualia did not do so. Wei Dualia knew that as the second-in-line successor to the throne, her identity was too sensitive. If she acted rashly, not only would it be useless, but she might even be labeled as a traitor. After careful consideration, she told Ponte, who was her spell teacher at the time, about this matter. After a series of verifications, Ponte believed Wei Dualia's words. The two of them began to gather evidence, preparing to expose Vader's true colors when the current Holy See returned from the faraway empire. Unexpectedly, Vader was so meticulous that he actually discovered Wei Dualia's plan. Thus, a bloody civil war began, known as the March Rebellion. At that time, 3 of the 5 aristocratic families were on Prince Vader's side, while the other remained neutral in order to protect themselves. Wei Dualia only had the Akkad family and Ponte's army behind her, so the situation could be said to be very unfavorable. The two sides confronted each other with the central avenue of Saint Lorraine as the boundary, launching an offensive and defensive war that lasted for a month. Under the combined suppression of the 3 aristocratic armies, Prince Vader's faction, and the cult, even with Ponte's help, the princess's army was still defeated. The situation at that time was indescribably tragic. The holy capital was littered with corpses, and even the heavy rain could not disperse the thick stench of blood and corpses. During the battle, Wei Dualia and Ponte were both seriously injured, and the reinforcements they asked for were also blocked outside the city. In a desperate situation, Ponte could only rely on his family's treasure to completely turn the surrounding area into a maze and hid with Wei Dualia. It was said that the enemy sent nearly 10,000 people to charge into Rock Street, where the two of them were hiding. But not many people were able to walk out of the foggy street again, let alone find them. This situation lasted for nearly 2 weeks, and it was in these 2 weeks that the history of the theocracy was changed. At that time, Wei Dualia's messenger broke through many obstacles and successfully met with the Great Holy See outside. When the Great Holy See heard that Vader had fallen into the cult and killed his sister, they turned pale with fright and hurriedly rushed back from the empire, finally managing to make it back before the maze was breached. And this maze was the place where Dualia and Ponte were hiding at that time. A fragment of the treasure was still preserved in the house, so it had some magical functions. What happened after that? What happened after that? Luoya, who was cut in half halfway through the story, was very upset and anxiously asked about the ending. Ai Lizzie also looked at him curiously. Kadia smiled and said, "The rest is left. Prince Vader was defeated and arrested by the Great Holy See who returned. The cult was uprooted, and the three noble families were punished. Ponte's ancestor and Dualia were rescued. After that, Dualia succeeded to the throne, and the Ackett family received a huge compensation. Our Ackett family became close comrades with Heathcliff from that generation." Kadia's words made Luoya and Ai Lizzie smile. No matter where it was, such a dramatic victory of good over evil was always a cause for celebration, especially when the victor was their own ancestor. But speaking of which, there is actually a rumor about this story. A rumor? The silver-haired girl asked curiously after hearing Kadia's words. The man kept them in suspense and pondered for a long time. Finally, under Luoya's disdainful gaze, he said it. "It is said that in that battle, Queen Dualia and Ponte's ancestor lived and died together. After the battle, the queen confessed to Ponte's ancestor, but Ponte's ancestor rejected her because of the age gap and their teacher-student relationship. That doesn't seem to be a good thing, right?" Ai Lizzie lowered her eyebrows in disappointment when she heard this rumor. Girls always liked romantic love stories, and she was a little sad that the lovers didn't get together. Luoya also complained, and Kadia smiled bitterly. It can't be helped. At that time, Ponte's ancestor was already married. In that case there's no other way. Ai Lizzie listened to Kadia's explanation and nodded, finally accepting this ending. After explaining, Kadia reached out and patted Luoya's shoulder. "I'm telling you this because there was also a man in our family who rejected the queen, and it was that famous Dualia." Chapter 37. To put it bluntly, Princess Noelle's birthday celebration was actually two large-scale social gatherings. One was naturally for the nobles who came, and the other was for the children they brought along. Although the children's social circle was still immature, their importance was no less than that of the adults. Whichever faction they belonged to when they were young, they would follow that faction when they grew up. Families with good relationships would require their heirs to form a group from young. Therefore, this birthday celebration was also quite important for a child like Luoya. Since he was absent last year, he was naturally at a disadvantage. Furthermore, there weren't many nobles under Marquis Ackett, and even fewer children, so the situation seemed quite grim. "Luoya, try to make new friends. If you can't make any, don't force it," Kadia warned Roja as they walked out the door, serving as a precaution. When the Marquis was young, he didn't have many friends due to the notoriety of the Ackett family's magi. He himself didn't like to form cliques, so considering this, Roja might not be too happy at this banquet. "It's fine, father. I don't care about these things. Ai Lizzie, once you enter, just follow your big brother Luoya." "Yes, I will." The silver-haired little girl raised her head and answered obediently. But when she lowered her head, the smile on her face gradually disappeared, and her expression carried a hint of uneasiness. Is she nervous? It's rare for Ai Lizzie to be like this." Luoya looked at the little girl and blinked his eyes, then opened his mouth to comfort her. "Ai Lizzie, it's fine, just follow me." "Yes, I understand, big brother." Hearing Luoya's comfort, the little girl forced a smile, suppressed the fear in her heart, and tried hard to dispel the shadow of the past. "It's fine. I'm already a member of the Ackett family, and big brother Luoya is here. As the saying goes, clothes make the man, and gold makes the Buddha." Most of the noble families in the theocracy naturally needed to dress up and attend this grand event. However, this wasn't enough. The nobles didn't only compare people, but also cars. Outside Heathcliff's manor, the usually quiet street was now crowded with carriages with exquisite decorations and emblems. Marquis Kadia took the opportunity to help Luoya and Ai Lizzie identify the emblems one by one. The emblems were the emblems of the other four noble families. That grizzly bear emblem belongs to Marquis Bafas of the Northern Territory. Their territory is located in the northernmost part of the theocracy. The people there are tough, and the winters there are much colder than here. The golden bird family emblem on our left is the House of Duke Listen. They are the only house of Duke in the theocracy, and their family heads have always been conservative and neutral. The tiger family emblem in front is the House of Earl Eric. They used to be marquises, but they were demoted to counts because they strongly supported Prince Vader during the March Rebellion. However, because they are located at the border, their military strength has always been strong. The one in front of all the carriages is Marquis Wester. Their family emblem is a windchime flower. In recent decades, they have been on the side of the Heathcliff family. They are considered one of the royal faction, but they are not very firm. Ka Dia introduced the noble families one by one, and Luoya listened attentively, so the two didn't notice the haze that flashed across Ai Lizi's face when the tiger family emblem was mentioned. The carriages in the queue entered the manor one by one as the gates opened. Luoya was lucky enough to see the beautiful scenery of the royal manor for the first time. Because it was winter, there were no fountains or lawns, but the style of the pavilions and terraces were quite attractive. The gardeners carefully trimmed cedars and other winter plants to bring some color to the courtyard. Luoya and the others got off the carriages and entered the building with the invitations. The servants handed the gifts to the staff of the manor. The interior of the manor was luxurious. There were crystal chandeliers, famous paintings, and everything else. Luoya stepped on the soft carpet and looked around. The style of the building was somewhat familiar. Doesn't it look familiar? This manor has been built for more than 100 years, so the style is somewhat similar to our family's labyrinth. Ka Dia revealed the mystery to the two children who were looking around. Then, under the guidance of the servants, they entered the hall. At this time, there was still more than an hour before the banquet officially began. So, what was the purpose of this period of time? The answer was the time for the small circle of guests to communicate with each other. Needless to say, the 5 noble families, the military, the administrative system, the palace nobles, the local nobles, and all kinds of factions would gather together during this period of time to understand each other's situation and to ease the tension before the banquet. Of course, this period of time could also be used to observe the targets of communication. In order to prepare for the following actions, Luoya and Ai Lizi were introduced to their own people during this period of time. Ka Dia dragged them back and forth between several nobles and military personnel who were close to him, and successfully found a few companions for them. The daughters of the counts, the daughters of the viscounts, and the daughters of the barons. In short, they were all girls. As for the boys, sorry, except for Luoya, there wasn't a single one. Am I a jinx? Chapter 38. What a boring event. Nua Iyer Heathcliff thought as he looked at the holy and beautiful face in the mirror. Nua Iyer didn't like to celebrate her birthday. Or rather, she didn't have a strong attachment to her birthday. Rather, she hated it because Nua Iyer's mother passed away on this day. Dystocia. This was the cause of her mother's death. Nua Iyer had never met her mother, but she had a father who loved her very much. So she could accept her birthday in the past. But since last year, things had become troublesome. If it was 2 years ago, it would have been fine. But ever since her debut last year, her birthday had basically become a large-scale social event for the upper echelons of society. This kind of incongruous feeling of a private object being used in public had always made the girl feel strange, and it also made her feel even more hypocritical and boring. Am I going to meet those nobles who are trying to flatter me again? To be honest, seeing those smiles made her feel disgusted, and their thoughts were nothing more than flattery and profit. It was too easy to see through them. It was so boring that it was unbelievable. What a boring day. No, wait, he will come this year, right? The expressionless Nua Iyer suddenly thought of something. The figure of a young man flashed in her mind. She remembered that he wasn't present at her birthday last year. But this year, the two of them met. So Marquis Akkad should have brought him along. If that's the case, maybe it will be a little more interesting? Everything went smoothly. Nua Iyer, who rarely appeared in public, stunned all the nobles. Regardless of age or gender, everyone looked at her with love and longing. But this didn't bring any joy to Wuxia. She smiled and looked forward, but her eyes quickly scanned the surroundings, looking for the young man of the same age. There were too many people who came to attend the banquet. Wuxia spent a lot of effort to find her target. It was a black-haired young man who followed behind his father with a helpless expression. He seemed to be out of place with the atmosphere around him. Pfft, what an interesting expression. Seeing Wuxia's awkward expression, Wuxia's body trembled. She almost couldn't help but laugh out loud. She took 2 deep breaths to maintain her composure, closed her eyes, and began to chant and pray. After praying for blessings, the banquet officially began. According to tradition, each family had to bring their children forward to have a chat with Kai-in and Wuxia, so that the children could get to know each other. This would take about 1 or 2 minutes for each family. If it took too long, it would be considered rude. This was what the Wuxia was annoyed with. Last year's greeting lasted for more than 2 hours. The Wuxia had to be courteous during this period of time. They also had to try their best to remember everyone's name and appearance. Since this was a standing buffet banquet, of course, they couldn't sit down and rest. As a leader, she had to show a perfect attitude. This was something the Wuxia knew very well. Therefore, she performed perfectly to the nobles who came forward to greet her. However, during the exchange, the blonde girl had been paying attention to the movements of the boy on the other side. First he argued with his father, Marquis Kadia. Then he hung his head dejectedly. Not long after, he and the silver-haired girl followed the footsteps of the adults and came forward. The moment she saw Wuxia's dejected expression, the Wuxia with perfect etiquette smiled from the bottom of her heart for the first time. Her beautiful face bloomed with charm that far exceeded the past, causing the nearby guests to be stunned. He couldn't have been resisting coming to see me before, right? This is really interesting. After realizing that it was actually her who made him reveal such a dejected expression, Miss Angel's mood suddenly improved. The bad habits that she had suppressed for a long time were finally released. At the same time, she began to think about why Wuxia was so against her. Although that child called Ai Lizzie is very cute, in terms of appearance I shouldn't lose to anyone. Is it because of my personality? Does my personality make you so afraid of snakes and scorpions? Wuxia narrowed her eyes. Not only was she not dissatisfied, but she became even more excited. The ardent desire to conquer swelled in her chest, and her irresistible nature made her eager to give it a try. She really wanted to step on him. Strange thoughts poured into her mind, and Wuxia had to do her best to control them. Although she liked Wuxia's dejected and helpless expression, she didn't want him to hate it. She wanted to conquer, not force. That would only give her an empty body, but not her true heart, and it wouldn't give her true happiness. But if she was only looking for someone who took the initiative, there would be too many disgusting people who approached her for various reasons. This would only arouse her disgust, and she would lack the feeling of conquering. So it was actually very difficult for Miss Angel to choose a target. She wanted someone who was unwilling, but had no choice but to accept those for her. And now, she had found a suitable prey. Wuxia knew her hidden habits. He wouldn't deliberately curry favor with her. He was somewhat afraid of her, but not to the extent of hating her. He had a delicate face, good acting skills, and was a guy who was cunning enough to fight with her. It's like a dessert that was specially prepared for me. Wuxia sighed in her heart, and a slight flush appeared on her face. Get him, make him unable to stop, and completely become my possession. Is there anything more exciting than this? The blonde holy angel thought so, and revealed a charming smile, and began to exchange blows with Wuxia. Long time no see. Greetings, respected highness. Chapter 39. I just want to see you. What do these words mean? Wuxia felt that it was similar to a joke like, what's supposed to come doesn't come. The moment Wuxia said this sentence, the nearby nobles who were waiting for an opportunity to step forward were all silent. Everyone who heard this sentence turned their heads and stared at Wuxia with wide eyes, making him feel as if there were needles pricking his back. Sorry, my choice of words was a bit inappropriate. I was too excited. The blonde girl seemed to have just realized her slip of the tongue. She gently covered her mouth and apologized. I said that on my birthday, the person I want to see the most is you. Nuwa Ayer's second speech once again stirred up a huge wave. The crowd clamored. This time, even those who were further away began to look over. Luoya suddenly became the center of attention. What is this woman saying? Luoya looked at Nuwa Ayer with a dumbfounded expression. He couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. The two of them had only met once. Why did she speak as if they were lovers? After Nuwa Ayer finished speaking, she quietly looked at Luoya with a smile. Her blue eyes seemed to be flashing with a hint of playfulness and excitement. However, how could this escape Luoya's eyes? Fuck. This woman is doing it on purpose. Luoya, who was originally puzzled, trembled. He realized that the other party seemed to be up to no good. He quickly thought for a moment and hurriedly said, "Oh, Your Highness, you want to play chess with me again? I understand. If there's a chance, I'll be happy to accompany you." Luoya, who was cornered, saw that the situation was not good. He hurriedly said such a sentence, causing the surrounding people to sigh in relief. What, it's just a chess game? I thought it was some explosive gossip. Luoya's explanation caused the crowd to lose interest. They began to turn around and continue their conversation. However, what Luoya didn't expect was that Nuwa Ayer didn't want to let him go. Chess? Well, that is indeed very interesting. But more importantly, the one playing chess with me is you. The young girl narrowed her eyes and said innocently. Her words aroused the emotions of the audience. Even Kai-in and Ka-dia looked at Luoya in surprise. You bastard! Nuwa Ayer, what the hell are you doing? How could this line be said so casually? Confess in public? Luoya didn't want to attract attention, and only wanted to live in silence. She didn't want to have anything to do with this masochist. However, things didn't always go according to one's wishes. After Nuwa Ayer's actions, others would definitely think that the two of them had a deep relationship and couldn't be separated. Luoya, who was complaining bitterly in his heart, became anxious. He didn't know how to open his mouth for a while, but he didn't expect that at this critical moment, a figure would stand out. Your Highness Nuwa Ayer, it has been a long time since we last met. It was a pleasant chat with you last time. But could you please stop teasing my elder brother? The silver-haired young girl took a step forward and gracefully bowed. Her unique sense of elegance and arrogance was like a clear spring, causing all the nobles who looked over to be amazed. Ai Lizzie, well done. Luoya, who received support, was wild with joy. He didn't expect Ai Lizzie to intervene at this critical moment. However, why did the usually introverted Ai Lizzie suddenly stand out? Moreover, she didn't seem too happy and aggressive. Could it be she also hates Nuwa Ayer? TSK, no wonder. Should I say that we are indeed siblings? Our likes and dislikes are the same. We are really born to be siblings. Luoya, who had a strong ability to understand, sighed. The sibling relationship was more important than anything else. Unlike a certain father, who was only watching the show with great interest. The youth secretly slandered Ka-dia at the side, while Ai Lizzie completely clashed with Nuwa Ayer. The golden-haired young girl narrowed her eyes slightly and met the silver-haired, red-eyed Ai Lizzie's eyes. Both of them seemed to understand each other's thoughts in an instant. This young girl actually likes her own sworn brother. Chapter 40. Today's banquet made Luoya realize one thing. The Heathcliff family was not only powerful, but also rich. For example, although the food on the table was just for the nobles to fill their stomachs, and no one would really eat to their heart's content, these half-eaten and half-thrown things were actually rare delicacies. The blood-eyed spotted birds of Sharon Forest had delicious meat, and were rare in number. Rumor had it that they were the werewolf scouts, and were currently nesting in their dinner plates. The paper crabs of the northern sea had thin skin, and overflowing crab roe and crab paste. In addition to the meat, the remaining fruits were also very precious. The wine was also aged for more than 20 years. It could be said that the taste of the food was at its peak. Luoya did not know how good the chefs of the Wang family were, but the ingredients were enough to make him jealous. As a foodie from the Celestial Empire, these dishes were far more attractive than those of the nobles. No matter how important it was to socialize, Could it stop the main character from killing him 10 years later? If it couldn't stop them, then it was better to eat something good now. Luoya thought as he cut some food to feed AI Lizzie. In this place, there were no servants, so he could only take care of AI Lizzie, who could not use a knife and fork. This was also the reason why Kadia asked him to bring AI Lizzie to dinner. However, Luoya did not expect AI Lizzie to reject him. "Brother, I am not that hungry. I'll just drink some juice." The silver-haired girl blushed. She naturally wanted to accept Luoya's kindness, but she could not let Luoya feed her in public like a servant. This might damage Luoya's dignity. Compared to her beloved brother being laughed at, AI Lizzie would rather starve. "I see. Then I'll get you a cup." "It's okay, brother. You don't have to take care of me. I'll go chat with the girls from before." "Oh, okay." Luoya thought about the daughters of the nobles, who were close to the Alcott family. After thinking for a while, he nodded. After all, this was a rare opportunity to make friends. AI Lizzie, who had been with Luoya all year round, didn't need to follow him at this time. After making up his mind, Luoya separated from AI Lizzie and began his journey to scavenge for delicious food alone. However, he didn't know that a pair of vicious eyes were already staring at the girl who was leaving. AI Lizzie walked through the corridor alone. It was winter, so the temperature in the manor was not high. Although the hall was warm with people coming and going, the heat dissipated in the corridor. The music and laughter of the crowd were much quieter here. The lights on both sides of the wall were hung very high, making the entire corridor somewhat dark. The tea room, which provided seats for the ladies to rest, was not far away. As AI Lizzie walked through the darkness, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. She hated this place, and she hated this activity. It wasn't because of the main character of the birthday banquet, Nuwa Iyer, nor was it because she had any opinions about the Heathcliff family. AI Lizzie simply had a memory here that she didn't want to recall. During last year's birthday party, she was bullied by a group of boys here. In order to gain the favor of the Count's son, the boys who used to bully her sold her out like a treasure. They dragged her to a deserted room and stabbed her with knives and forks. This incident caused the girl to have a fear of knives and forks, and since then, she didn't dare to hold a knife and fork in her hands. Although her father was very angry after the incident, AI Lizzie herself couldn't find a single wound on her body due to her ability. With so many perpetrators and no evidence, the matter could only be left unsettled. AI Lizzie didn't tell Luoya and Kadia about this incident, because it was all in the past. The sensible girl didn't want to cause trouble for them. This year, AI Lizzie also saw the group of boys at the banquet. But unlike before, the girl's identity had changed. She was no longer the child of a declining baron family, but AI Lizzie Akate, a member of the Marquis Akate family. As long as she had this surname, those who bullied the weak and feared the strong wouldn't dare to cause trouble, because any insult to AI Lizzie would be regarded as disrespect and provocation to the Akate family. In fact, those boys did hurriedly avoid her gaze. "Finally, I won't encounter that kind of thing again?" the girl muttered to herself. But she didn't expect that two people would suddenly appear from the dark fork in the road and block her way. They were the two children of the Viscount family, who bullied her since she was young, Luke and Sean. "Stop! AI Lizzie, long time no see." "You are." The two children who blocked her way looked at the surprised girl, and a malicious smile appeared on their faces almost reflexively. Having bullied AI Lizzie since they were young, they knew the girl's weakness very well. In fact, AI Lizzie's face did indeed show a frightened expression at this moment. However, they guessed the beginning but not the end. AI Lizzie's heart was indeed filled with fear, but soon a figure appeared in her mind. Luoya's meticulous care and companionship for the past few months had awakened the girl. She remembered the surname that hung behind her name, and understood that she had to change. In the past, when she succumbed to fear, it could be attributed to her fear of power. But now, if she were to succumb again, there would be no excuse. It would just be her own cowardice and cowardice. If the bully didn't resist, there would only be one outcome, and that was to be persecuted more and more. For some reason at this moment, the figure of Nuwa Iyer suddenly appeared in AI Lizzie's eyes. It was a confidence and pride that was completely different from hers, almost to the point of sacredness. If it wasn't for Luoya, she would have looked forward to Nua Iyer very much, but now that she confronted Nua Iyer, there was only one thought in her heart. Chapter 41. Luoya wandered around the banquet hall, eating while thinking about some of the things Kadia had taught him. Last year's birthday party was very important, not only because it was Nua Iyer's coming out ceremony, but also because it was the first time all the young children of the theocracy had gathered together. There were many social gatherings between adults, whether it was tea parties for the ladies or ordinary banquets. However, gatherings between the children of nobles were rare, and it was only once a year. In such a banquet, the interaction between adults was secondary, as the main focus was on their own children. Luoya's absence last year was a serious loss, not only because he didn't have any friends, but also because another family got to enjoy the benefits. The Eric family. Among the 5 great nobles, only the Marquis of Akate and the Eric Borderberg family were about the same age as Nua Iyer. Because Luoya was absent last year, the one with the highest status was the eldest son of the Eric family, Brown Eric. As Nua Iyer was the main character, he had to meet all the nobles, so Brown was like a fish in water at the banquet last year. If it was just a child, it wouldn't be a big deal, but this child had a lot of bad rumors about him. The Eric Youth Gang was what Kadia called them. It was said that Brown had gathered a lot of the little scum that he played with, as well as the nobles' lackeys who were entangled with each other, and formed a group to commit crimes together. It had caused a lot of problems in the past, but it wasn't a big deal, so it was dealt with secretly. Hearing about the Eric family, Luoya felt a little uncomfortable, because he had learned a lot recently, so he knew a lot about this family. More than 100 years ago, the Eric family was still a marquis, and their fief was vast. It could be said that they were the head of the 5 great nobles, and even the Listen family, who was a duke in name, was much weaker than them. At their peak, they were even comparable to the royal family. In that war, the Eric family supported Prince Vader, and was the main force of Vader's faction. On the other hand, Princess Wei Dualia was alone, and could only rely on the Akate family for survival. However, it was precisely because of the schemes of the head of the Akate family that they were bound to win that war that they lost. The Great Labyrinth had absorbed too much of their forces, so when the Holy See returned, Vader no longer had enough strength to defeat them and ascend to the throne. The impact of Prince Vader's defeat was far-reaching, leaving a deep mark in the history of the theocracy. However, it was a disaster for the Eric family. As the #1 supporter of Vader's faction, the head of the Eric family committed suicide to atone for his crimes, hoping to preserve his family. However, the outcome was not ideal. The Eric family was demoted to an earl, and a large portion of their territory was taken away, leaving only the barren land at the border for the family to manage. A large part of these seized territories was given to the Akate family, reversing the order of the strength of the 5 noble families. It was not until 100 years later that the Eric family regained its strength. Unfortunately, the Eric family did not feel that it was wrong to support Prince Vader at that time, nor did they feel that there was anything wrong with starting a war and staining the holy city with blood. They only believed that the winner was king while the loser was in the wrong. All their failure was due to the obstruction of the Akate family. Without this damned family, the Eric family might have even replaced the royal family. That's right, Eric, who had a deep historical grudge, only showed respect to the current royal family, Heathcrete, on the surface. They always wanted to take back their ancestral land and their former glory. As for Akate, he was something they hated from the bottom of their hearts. Wait, the young gang that father mentioned should be here this time. Normally, a brat of this age should not be afraid of anything and come looking for trouble with me, right? Why haven't I seen any of them for so long? The black-haired boy's golden pupils swept across the venue, only to find that the group centered around a blonde boy had disappeared. Luoya frowned, a bad premonition rising in her heart. Wait, could it be? Brown and Eric were now filled with anger. There was no other reason. In today's banquet, except for the bad seedlings who were willing to follow him to commit crimes. Almost all the noble children were trying to get to know another person. That person was the son of the 5 great noble families, Wuxia Akat. Brown didn't think that this situation was because of his bad reputation in the past year. Instead, he thought that it was a trick of the Akat family. But in any case, Wuxia's arrival broke Brown's dominance among his peers. This situation made him anxious, but he didn't know where to start. At this moment, Ai Lizzie appeared. A good target to make an example out of. But no one could find any weakness. Disgusting things can only be put together with disgusting things. Ai Lizzie Akat, haha, this name makes me want to vomit. In the spare room, Brown looked at the silver-haired girl with an unfriendly expression. Ai Lizzie, do you still remember me? I'm your good friend, Brown. You actually rejected my invitation just now. That really makes me sad. The blonde boy looked at the girl's red pupils and put the fork near her eyes in a threatening manner. Elisa looked at the sharp fork, and her body trembled. Tears welled up in her eyes. She bit her lips and asked, "What's wrong? What do you want?" "Nothing. I just want to catch up with you. Originally, I wanted to bully you a little this year, but I didn't expect you to join the Akat family. After the death of father, there's a new one, and a useless brother. No, I won't allow you to insult my brother." "Oh, why? You seem to like him. That's great." Brown laughed sinisterly, lowering his head to the girl's ear and laughed softly. Chapter 42. Wuxia never thought that there would be a flag at this banquet. Ai Lizzie's resentment towards the original Wuxia was probably because of this. In the past, Wuxia didn't have the courage or ability to stop all this. He could only watch from the side in fear. But now Wuxia was different. He couldn't describe his feelings with words. He only felt that his body was burning, his thoughts were burning, and the magic in his body was also burning. At the same time, he understood a problem. For a long time, he had been thinking, what was the point of working so hard to reach source level 6? For the future plot, this bit of strength didn't seem to be of any use. But today, standing behind Brown, he thought it through. The reason he had advanced to source level 6 was probably to pull out this flag and kill this dog in human skin with his own hands. Where did you come from?" Boom. Wuxia, who suddenly appeared, didn't say a word. He didn't intend to listen to Brown's words. He reached out and held the back of the blonde youth's head with a smile. In the next second, he pressed him down and slammed him on the table in front of Brown. Boom. The concentrated explosion of the curse seemed to draw Wuxia's blood at this moment, gathering all the energy in his body into this fierce smash. Brown's head fell with the wind, his face almost embedded into the table. But Wuxia wasn't satisfied with this result. Boom, 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 gotcha. In a row, Wuxia grabbed Brown's head and slammed it on the solid wood table 4 times in a row in front of everyone in the room, who hadn't reacted yet. It wasn't until the 5th time that Wuxia's movements slightly stopped. Damn, he's still not dead. The black-haired youth coldly looked at Brown, whose face was covered in blood, but was still struggling to pull out his head. He pondered that this was most likely an origin grade 6. Otherwise, this guy's head would have been split open by the first concentrated burst. At this time, the people of the same age behind him finally reacted. "Boss! Stop him! Do it!" Seeing their boss being beaten into the table, the villains turned pale with fright. They were all Brown's loyal followers. Now that their bad-tempered boss was beaten to such a state, even if the opponent was the young master of the Akat family, they could only step forward. 11. Wuxia looked around and quickly determined the number of enemies. The battle curse of balanced breathing began to circulate in his body. The stamina that was consumed by hitting Brown's head-on began to quickly recover. Wuxia's muscles squirmed and contracted. He clashed with the Eric family's lackeys. "Big brother Wuxia. Ai Lizzie, wait a moment, I have to take care of." After comforting Elisa, who saw Roja's face full of tears, the boy began to deal with his opponent. Even if Roja was promoted to the 6th level, it was still difficult for him to fight so many of them. These lackeys of the Eric family were nobles, and they were obviously talented. There were 5 of them, who were at the same level as him. How should he fight? He definitely couldn't win. But fighting wasn't just a physical battle. It was also a psychological battle. He had to be ruthless. He had to make them afraid. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to win if they swarmed him. Having made up his mind, the youth hardened his heart. Facing the strongest of the 3 people who were leading the charge, he directly chose to fight with his fist. Curse gloves! Roar! 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 A blue flame wrapped his hand. The next moment the 2 fists collided. A crisp sound was heard. Brown's men screamed. Ah! The force of the origin substance +6 collided with the cursed gloves. It was as if someone had used their full strength to forge iron. The lackey vanguard cried out in pain, rolling on the ground in pain. The group of people who were running over from behind suddenly stopped in their tracks. Taking advantage of the distraction, Luoya pounced on the other 2 and punched them in the face. The 2 lackeys, who hadn't reached source level 6, were sent rolling and hit the wall. After winning the first battle, Luoya immediately took the initiative to pounce on the rest of the opponents. What followed was a chaotic battle. The source level 7 lackeys were useless in this battle. They were quickly cleared out of the battlefield with a punch. The remaining 4 source level 6 lackeys fought with Luoya. It had to be said that the source level 6 lackeys all had some skills. Among the 4, one of them was a tall fighter whose body was as hard as stone. Even Luoya's cursed gloves couldn't break through his defense. Another one's hands were boiling hot. If he grabbed them, his skin would be burnt open. The remaining 2 were probably just promoted and didn't know any curses. Against this combination of high offense and high defense, Luoya's fighting style was basically exchanging injury for injury. He sacrificed one hand to clamp down on his opponent's fiery palms, while the cursed gloves appeared on his other hand. He fiercely smashed his opponent's face. After knocking this troublesome guy unconscious, he used a Muay Thai move with his knee and elbow to break the stone man's leg. Chapter 43. Big Brother Luoya. Go to hell! Go to hell! Go to hell! Silently rushing from behind Luoya was a bloody Brown. At this time his handsome face was completely destroyed. Many small wooden stubble pierced his face. His tall nose bridge collapsed, and his eyes were blood red like a madman. Damn, his head smashed through the table, and he can still get up? Luoya underestimated the resistance of an origin grade 6. He didn't expect Brown to get over the concussion so quickly, and he didn't expect him to be so vicious, silently stabbing him in the back with a table knife. A burst of burning pain followed. Luoya's abdomen was stabbed by Brown's knife. At this critical moment, the teenager used concentrated explosive force to lock his abdominal muscles and firmly held the knife. Son of a bitch, you dare to use a knife? Do you want to die? Huh? Although I wanted to lure you to do something, I didn't expect you to take the initiative to come for that ugly bastard. You gave me a good opportunity. There are so many people here, and everyone has hurt you. Do you know what this means? The curse power can't lock onto me. Even if I kill you, I have a way to get rid of the crime of murder. You are the only son of the Akate family. Killing you will break the inheritance. Even if I am not the heir, I will still be Eric's hero. Big Brother Luoya. Brown, whose head was bleeding, roared crazily. He pushed the table knife with both hands, and Luoya also exerted force. The teenager's magic essence was almost exhausted, and he didn't have the curse power glove on his hand. His right hand holding the knife was dripping with blood, but it didn't move. The black-haired teenager's golden eyes and Brown's green eyes looked at each other. One was indifferent, the other was ruthless. The tug-of-war of life and death began. As time passed, Luoya's hand gradually began to tremble. The continuous fighting made his left hand seriously burned and unable to use it. His right elbow was also injured. His balanced breathing was broken, and the magic essence in his body was running out. Compared to him, Brown was in a sorry state, but his condition was better. Haha, you have no strength. Aren't you very powerful? Why can't you hold the saber? A vicious smile appeared on Brown's face. He clenched his teeth and exerted force again. The table knife was slowly pushed millimeter by millimeter into the boy's abdomen. Luoya's blood immediately gushed out and dripped onto the ground. Brown, who had gained the upper hand, revealed a smile on his bloodied face. He was almost certain of his victory, but he did not notice the figure rushing behind him. I must help Brother Luoya, Ai Lizzie thought as her body trembled. The battle had reached its final stage. Luoya and Brown were locked in a tug-of-war. In Ai Lizzie's eyes, Brown had gone mad. He really wanted to kill Luoya, even if he had to die with him. She had to help her beloved brother. But what should she do? Although Ai Lizzie was a bloodline user, she was still too young. Her source rank was still 7, and even at a lower level, there was a world of difference between source rank 7 and source rank 6. Furthermore, Ai Lizzie was a girl. The difference in combat strength was too great. So great that Ai Lizzie could even ignore it. But was there really no other way? No, there was. There was a tool invented by humans since ancient times that could greatly increase one's combat strength. It was called a weapon. The silver-haired girl's face was pale as she looked at the table knife, stained with blood on the table. Her body trembled uncontrollably. It was this very knife that had swayed in front of her eyes. To Ai Lizzie, this was a weapon more terrifying than anything in the world. If it was in the past, she would not even dare to look at it. But now, Ai Lizzie looked at it. Even if she was trembling, even if she could not control her tears, the girl still looked straight at it. In this bizarre world, there were too many things that the girl was afraid of, but there were very few things that she treasured. That day, when Luoya personally fed her food at the table, it was as if happiness had knocked on her door for the first time. The knife was terrifying, but compared to losing Luoya, losing this happiness, Ai Lizzie felt that the latter was 1,000,000 times more terrifying. Move, move, the girl shouted in her heart. She trembled as she grasped the blood-stained knife. The light knife in her hand was as heavy as 1,000 pounds, but the strength in her heart allowed Ai Lizzie to lift it for the first time. She had to protect Brother Luoya. Ai Lizzie clenched her teeth and rushed towards the figure with his back facing her. Chapter 44. Nua Iyer Heathcliff looked down at the man who was covered in bruises and bruises. His mood was complicated. Although I want to see your troubled and helpless expression, the fact that you're looking at someone else makes me a little annoyed. What kind of strange possessiveness is this? Probably the kind that hates other people playing with my toys. TSK, you're hopeless. Haha, hopeless? Maybe, but now. The princess, who was smiling because of the short conversation with Luoya, turned her head, and the smile in her eyes disappeared completely. Is there anything else you want? Your Highness, I apologize for offending you, but this is a personal matter between us and him. The leader glanced at Brown, who was lying on the table. The fear in his heart made him want to do something to avoid his boss's anger. We don't mean to be disrespectful. We just want to avenge our friends. Yes, we don't mean to offend you. Oh, I see. Nua Iyer looked coldly at the noisy mob, then glanced at the dozen people on the floor, and Brown, who was like a dead dog. He then smiled and clapped his hands. I see. What a touching friendship. Brown Eric has so many friends. Unknowingly, so many of his peers in the theocracy are his friends. Nua Iyer smiled brightly, but his eyes were cold. These idiots thought that they were doing it secretly. In fact, Nua Iyer had already seen the so-called Eric Youth Gang in the secret royal documents. For any monarch, forming cliques for personal gain was intolerable, let alone winning over an entire generation of nobles. Nua Iyer smiled, turned his head, and raised the black-haired young man's chin. He looked at his golden eyes that were filled with surprise. In comparison, Luoya, Mr. Akat, you're really pitiful. I seem to be your only friend. Sorry you're not although your stubborn look is cute, please don't reject my help. After all, you're not alone, right? Nua Iyer's words made Luoya, whose mouth was covered, stop moving. He turned to look at Ai Lizzie, who was sleeping beside him, and fell silent with a complicated expression. The blonde girl released her grip and looked down at Ai Lizzie, who was being protected by Luoya's arm. She felt an inexplicable sense of envy. Then, since you want to avenge your friend, I naturally have the obligation to protect my friend. Nua Iyer calmed himself down and turned around to face the dumbfounded crowd. In the name of the owner of this place, I request that you leave immediately. The blonde girl's words silenced everyone in the room. They looked at each other. The entanglement of interests and the fear of Eric's family made them hesitate. This scene had completely infuriated Nuair. What? It seems that you don't want to listen to Heathcliff's advice? So that's how it is. Do it then. No we. Nuair's words caused a commotion, but the next moment Miss Angel, whose smile faded, glanced around. The violent magic broke through her skin and extended into irregular light wings. An invisible pressure rushed out of her body like a waterfall. Luoya's blood seemed to have stagnated at this moment. His whole body was cold, and the heavy pressure seemed to be squeezing his alveoli. However, this indescribable horror and discomfort disappeared in an instant. Nuair seemed to have taken special care of him. His body felt lighter, and his rapid breathing calmed down. The young man looked at the back of the figure in front of him, with eyes full of disbelief. Chapter 45. Kacha. The crisp sound echoed in the room for the umpteenth time. But this time it was different, because it was the sound of a neck being broken. Ah! She above, what have you done? Screams and frightened nobles exploded in the room. The people who were glaring at Brown and the others were stunned. Prince Kai Yin's eyes were filled with disbelief. Kadia hurriedly covered Ailizi's eyes. Nuair frowned. And Luoya looked at the man with the same blonde hair and green eyes as Brown, feeling a chill run down his spine. No one had expected that Earl Brian, who had walked out of the crowd, would not come to save his son. Instead, he had broken his son's neck with a single blow. This guy is so vicious. Roja looked at the front with an ugly face. This time, the normal process is to beat up the young one, and then Kadia and Kane will attack the Eric family. Wouldn't that be a big blow to the Eric family's strength? This guy didn't follow the rules at all. Luoya looked at the blonde man and met Brian's eyes. The moment their eyes met, Luoya felt a chill run down his spine, as if he was looking at a poisonous snake. Brian, what are you doing? Kadia noticed that Brian was looking at Luoya and stepped forward to block his line of sight. She narrowed her eyes and asked in an unfriendly manner. The blonde man was silent for a moment. Then he said indifferently, "Nothing. I'm just looking at the boy who stopped Brown's foolish act." Brian answered Kadia, then looked around and said loudly, "Everyone, I apologize to the Eric family. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my sincere apologies on behalf of the Eric family. It was my failure in education that led to this tragedy. Now I have made Brown pay the price for his atrocities. As for the harm that Miss Elisa has suffered, we will also find another day to compensate her. Please forgive us." Brian's words caused an eerie silence to fill the room. The nobles who had witnessed him personally killing his own son had looks of fear on their faces. The military, Cairns, Kadia and the rest were speechless as they looked at the dead Brown. The blonde man saw that no one raised any objections, and looked at Noel, who was beside Cairns. "Your Highness, I am deeply sorry for causing such a scandal on your birthday. Please forgive me." "Earl Brian, you're too kind. You handled it well." Nuair praised Brian insincerely. Her words were full of sarcasm, but the man didn't care. "Well then, Your Highness Kain, my family is unfortunate. There are still many things that need to be dealt with. Please allow me to leave first." Brian bowed slightly, then grabbed Brown's body from the table and strode out. The surrounding nobles hurriedly made way for him. Only when his figure disappeared at the end of the corridor did the crowd breathe a sigh of relief. Luoya looked at Earl Eric's departure, and suddenly felt that he had underestimated the nobles of this world. These nobles had experienced blood and fire for hundreds of years, and had risen and fallen repeatedly. It wasn't that they didn't make mistakes, but they knew how to deal with them. Brown was an idiot. He was too childish. The moment he picked up the knife, he was already done for. However, Earl Eric was like a perfect product that had gone through all the noble education. Everything he did was for the benefit of his family. He didn't even have any personal feelings for his father. Brown and Brian left, but the matter of Brown's gang wasn't resolved yet. Only a few of the people who were knocked unconscious by Luoya had woken up. Prince Kain didn't care about these young criminals. He waved his hand and the staff took them away. They would be dealt with in the manor. After that, they would be registered and sent back to their parents. Because of this incident, they were blacklisted by the royal family. What awaited them was definitely not a good future. Hey, how did you find me? When Ka Dia and Kai Yin were dealing with the aftermath of the incident, Luoya couldn't help but ask Nua Iyer this question. The blonde girl blinked and said, "Because you were called away by a girl and never came back. I was a little curious, so I tried to look for you. Coincidentally, I saw that group of people rushing into the room. So it's fate? Fate your head." Luoya snorted at Nua Iyer's answer. He recalled what happened before he came here. After separating from Ai Lizzie, as a glutton, Luoya naturally didn't hold back. He immediately carried a plate and started to eat. With his elegant table manners, no one noticed anything wrong. But halfway through the meal, he suddenly realized that the number of boys in the hall had decreased significantly. He immediately thought of this nuisance of the young gang. Luoya felt uneasy. He could only ask the girls in his gang about the situation. He didn't expect to bump into a girl who saw Brown's gang take away Ai Lizzie. When Luoya heard that Ai Lizzie was bullied, he immediately decided to go over. After asking her about the situation, he chose to let the girl look for Ka Dia. He used the items he bought at a discount over the past few months to act in secret. Lover in the shadows, rootless love, false feelings. The lover in the shadows bleeds blood. But people think it's just warm tears. Yep. Another useless introduction. This lover in the shadows was actually a red gauze. The material was similar to a wedding dress. Chapter 46. Have you ever risked your life for someone else? Luoya was speechless when he saw this question on a dating app in his previous life. Bro, it's already 0202. Who do you want to risk your life for? In the modern society where individual combat was gradually being withdrawn from the stage, fighting had become a low-probability event, let alone risking your life for someone else. This was especially true in China, where public security was at the top of the world. If you ran into the police with a watermelon knife on the street, you would be held down in minutes. Who do you want to risk your life for? Luoya scoffed at this question. He also didn't believe that he would have such a day until the incident with Ai Lizzie. In the original work, this incident should have caused a decisive break in the relationship between Ai Lizzie and Luoya. But this time, because Luoya took the initiative to attack, everything was different. However, it had to be said that the price of risking your life was heavy. After beating down 12 people, Luoya's body was seriously injured. His left hand was scalded. His right palm was cut by a blade, his elbows and knees were dripping with blood, and several of his ribs were broken. Although the wound on his abdomen wasn't deep, it was indeed a stab wound. Other large and small abrasions were also innumerable. Of course, there was naturally a lot of blood, which was also the reason why Luoya fell into a coma. If it weren't for the existence of supernatural powers in this world, he would probably be bedridden for a long time. Ugh, it hurts. On the bed, the unconscious young man was pulled out of his sleep by the piercing pain on his body. Before he even opened his eyes, he was already screaming in pain. His body was also twisted, and in the end, he accidentally pulled on his wound and woke up completely. Luoya gritted his teeth and opened his eyes to look around. The design of the ceiling was quite good. It was a mural of the Virgin Mary that was popular more than 100 years ago. There were many decorations and works of art on the walls. The contrast between the red carpet and the brightly colored furniture made the room look magnificent. It was a room in the labyrinth. Luoya heaved a sigh of relief when he felt a sense of familiarity. Then he immediately noticed the person beside the bed. It was a young girl with silver hair that draped over her shoulders. Her appearance was cold and arrogant, and she gave people a feeling that she was untouchable and unapproachable. At this moment, she was sitting on a chair in front of the bed with her head slightly lowered and dozing off. Her delicate little face inadvertently revealed some cuteness, causing Luoya's heart to fiercely jump. This girl was becoming more and more beautiful. The sleeping Ai Lizzie was so cute that Luoya couldn't help but stare at her for a while. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Speaking of which, the Ai Lizzie would probably become more and more beautiful in the future. After all, the bloodline of the pale silver children pursued perfection, and the body was no exception. TSK. It felt like there would be a lot of pests in the future. Luoya rubbed his chin and thought so viciously. The doting expression on his face was overflowing. The incident with Brown made him fully aware of the troubles that AI Lizzie, as one of the female protagonists, could encounter. In the face of these troubles, he made a choice with practical actions. That was to smash the heads of all those who harbored malicious intentions, so that they could fully expose themselves and enjoy the judgment of justice and social death. Of course, there were exceptions if their necks were broken by their own fathers. That was a family matter, and Luoya wouldn't take the blame. Thinking of this, the young man's restless heart slightly sank. The face of the blonde man appeared in his mind. Brian Eric, that's a terrible man. As the saying went, even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. Although Brown's behavior this time had angered the public, and as the heir, he was still a member of the Eric family. The privileges of the 5 noble families were not to be trifled with. Strictly speaking, even Heathcliff couldn't punish Brown directly. He had to go through the trial of the theocracy's court. During the trial, there were too many tricks that could be played. Although the Eric family was not as powerful as it was 200 years ago, it was still rising in recent decades. It was more than enough to save the life of a son who didn't kill anyone. However, in order to appease the public's anger and prevent people from investigating the Eric family, Brian actually made a prompt decision to kill his son. It was a little scary, and his attitude at that time. Brown was a typical lawless brat. The rapid expansion of the Eric family's power in the past 10 years should have caused his character to develop. However, he was too different from his father. Luoya always felt that Brian didn't seem to care about the heir as much as the other nobles. He might not even have tried to control him. To be honest, this person made Luoya feel very strange. He didn't want to have such a ruthless enemy. However, seeing how Brian stared at him, he probably couldn't avoid this enemy. But so what? In Luoya's heart, AI Lizzie was now a treasure given to him by God. Anyone who touched AI Lizzie would die, no exception. Luoya, who was cursing, felt a little guilty. Thinking about it from the perspective of the family, he felt that it was actually not bad. Due to the friendship during the Twin War, the Alcott family and the Heathcliff family had always been on good terms. Among the 5 noble families, the Alcott family was close to the royal family. However, the other 4 noble families' positions had changed from time to time. Earl Eric's family was also known to be at odds with the royal family. The large number of Brown's gang had already given the Heathcliff family a warning. After several generations of leniency, a large number of pests had been bred among the nobles. These pests were incompatible with the original teachings of the theocracy. They had already begun to gather around the Eric family for warmth. Once the evil gang grew stronger, they would naturally be unwilling to continue to be a piece of shit. They would inevitably challenge the authority of the Heathcliff family. This was a necessity for their own interests. Prince Cain should have seen this clearly through this incident. According to the plot in the game, Brown's gang might continue to grow stronger. When these dogs in human skin grew up and gained power, they would inevitably cause a disaster that would affect the entire theocracy. Wait, if I think about it this way, Nuwa Iyer once said that there was a riot in the theocracy. Was it because of Brown's gang? Was it a joint effort to overthrow the throne? Could it be a coup d'état? Luoya frowned as he thought about this. He deeply felt the huge impact of his victory. After this battle, Heathcliff family would probably come back to their senses. Next, the royal family would probably focus on eliminating the dead branches and withered leaves among the nobles. Of course, they would also attack the organizer Eric. However, with Brown's death, the progress would be slowed down. Chapter 47. Green, so green. So much, so much. This was Luoya's first thought after being hugged by AI Lizzie. 50,000 favorability points. What the hell? I don't think I can reach this number even if I work hard for a month. The black-haired youth looked at the green light above AI Lizzie's head and roared in his heart. But thinking about it, he didn't see any favorability points from AI Lizzie during the whole incident with Brown. Does this mean that this is the total number of favorability points? Oh, then it's fine. Luoya looked at his broken arms and legs, and felt that the price he paid was worth it. He retracted the surprise in his heart, and began to feel other feelings, such as so soft, so warm, and so fragrant. But it's a pity that she's still too young. Otherwise she would be even softer and more fragrant. Luoya buried his face in Ai Lizi's neck, and took a deep breath. It felt 10,000 times better than sucking on a cat. He felt as though his heart was filled up, not to mention that it was accompanied by a confession. I love you, big brother. Ai Lizi said this sentence with a sobbing tone, causing Luoya's heart to beat violently. He felt an inexplicable itch in his heart. Big brother, do you love me? Aye. The sudden question stunned Luoya, and he didn't know how to answer for a moment. Ai Lizi saw this, and let go of her hand. She stood up and looked at the youth. Her red gem-like eyes met with Luoya's golden eyes. An uncontrollable desire overflowed from her. Luoya widened his eyes slightly. Ai Lizi's rare calmness, and even somewhat serious expression, made him know that this wasn't the time to play dumb. He could feel that the girl was actually afraid. Her fingertips were trembling slightly. She was afraid of being rejected. It should be the influence of Brown's words. Perhaps it was also the uneasiness towards the people close to her after stabbing others. But how could Luoya reject her? I love you too, Ai Lizi. He reached out and hugged the girl tightly. Hearing this, the silver-haired girl cried tears of joy again. Outside the room, Anna, who was peeking through the crack of the door, was tearfully looking at the two little figures sticking together. Biting her handkerchief, she gently closed the door, and turned to look at the large group of servants outside. Young master and young mistress, it's done. Woo-woo. Really? Oh. Long live miss. Now the Akot family is in the bag. A group of Luoya x Ai Lizi fans cheered when they heard the news brought by Anna. The servants on the Ai Lizi side even cried tears of joy. Anna, are you sure it's true? Of course, how could it be wrong? Anna, who was wiping her tears, immediately straightened her back in the face of other people's doubts. She told the story of how the two of them confessed their love to each other on the bed in full detail. The servants heard Anna's words and screamed repeatedly. But considering young master and young mistress age, could it be just familial love? Maybe, but young master and young mistress are such precocious children. There should be more elements of love involved. I think it's love. The people in the fan club analyzed at once. Unfortunately, no matter how much they analyzed, they couldn't figure out Luoya's inner thoughts. Like a cat, Luoya stroked Ai Lizi's soft silver hair and hooked her delicate waist. He felt like he was teasing a clingy cat. Thinking about it carefully, he felt that Ai Lizi and a cat did have many similarities. Chapter 48. Late at night, Brian Eric was walking in the corridor of Eric's mansion in St. Dew. His footsteps echoed in the silent building. The moonlight shone through the window on his body, making the man who already gave off a cold feeling even more chilling. Walking to the end of the corridor, he took out the key and opened the door. Brian's journey had finally come to an end. It was a mercury mirror that was as tall as a person. Its shape was a bit like a gate. It seemed to be quite old. In fact, its owner did use it this way. Brian stood in front of the mirror and looked at himself with a calm, but somewhat gloomy expression. He reached out his hand and lightly tapped on the mirror. Lebbet opened the door. Following his call, the surface of the mirror fluctuated. An eye suddenly appeared in the center of the mirror. It turned to look at Brian in front of the mirror, and then disappeared. The next moment, the fluctuation of the spell on the mirror began to increase greatly. Then it suddenly opened from the inside like a gate. Inside the gate, a hunchbacked old man holding a key was bowing to him. Welcome back, Vice President. After faintly nodding his head, Brian stepped into the mirror. The surrounding scenery changed and turned into a dark castle. The Tasting Association's headquarters was the name of this castle that seemed to be in the dark all the time. It was also the cradle of a group of lunatics who were immersed in art. Collector. Has Mr. President arrived? Yes, but you're late. We just finished an auction. My human face drum was sold at a high price. It almost became the finale this time. The hunchbacked old man followed Brian's footsteps and smiled humbly. He seemed to hope that his words could attract the attention of this unfathomable vice president. However, his actions were just actions. In fact, he didn't have any expectations in his heart. But what he didn't expect was that Brian really seemed to have something to tell him today. My bloodline, 10 years old, is missing some blood. If I give it to you, how much can you do? 10 years old? Boy. Yes. Let me think about it. If the body is not damaged with my skills, I can at least let you live for another 20 years. The hunchbacked old man smiled and reached out his dirty hand that seemed to be stained with blood. Brian looked at him expressionlessly for a while and nodded. Okay, I'll give it to you later. The reward will satisfy you. You just wait and see. I won't let you down. However, you only have 6 bloodlines left in your family, right? I suggest that you raise the others, otherwise, it would be a waste. Are you done? I'm going to see the president. I'm done. Please. Brian's words made the old man stop nagging. He nodded and bowed with a flattering smile, watching the man walk into the depths of the darkness. After placing the order, Brian felt a little better. The past few days had been troublesome for him. Due to the failure of his plan, Heathcliff and the Ackett family had joined forces to put pressure on him. They had begun to attack the power of the Eric family both openly and secretly in various fields. The useless nobles under him began to panic and came to him one after another to complain about the bad influence of their children on their families. However, that was only on the surface. In fact, Brian knew very well what they wanted. It was nothing more than various methods to prolong their lifespan. Yes, this was a deal. In exchange for their loyalty to the Eric family and their children to follow Brian's son Brown, they would get the means to live and even the hope of recovery. Of course, Brian didn't spend so much effort to give his son any armed forces. In fact, this was only part of the plan. It didn't succeed. I didn't expect your plan to fail. Is there any condition that hasn't been met? No, the vicious and stubborn heir and the children who follow him have all been met. There's no problem with the time, but I don't know why the prophecy failed. At one end of the long table, Brian took a sip of tea and said in a cold tone. He had put in a lot of effort for this prophecy. Not only had he prepared for it for a whole year, he had also used all kinds of methods to lure people away in advance, creating a suitable environment for Brown. But he never expected that Wuxia, who was said to have mediocre supernatural abilities, was different from the rumors. He was neither recruited nor killed. After a fierce battle, the one who finally crawled out of the blood-stained room was the boy from the Ackett family. The blond man was expressionless and annoyed. At the other end of the long table, the figure in the dark chuckled. Chapter 49. Ai Lizzie spent one of the happiest days of her life in Akat. Ever since she was young, Ai Lizzie's time with the people she loved was very short. Her father, Rant, was very busy with the knight's office and rarely came home. Since young, Ai Lizzie spent every boring day with the servants. After her father left her, she was adopted by Marquis Akat, who was under her father's protection. Ai Lizzie didn't have a good impression of Marquis Kadia at first. After all, no matter how reasonable she was, it was difficult for Ai Lizzie to get close to Kadia, who was one of the reasons for her father's death. That was why Ai Lizzie was very polite when she saw Kadia. Polite but distant. That was the limit of what Ai Lizzie could do. It was the same when she saw him. Ai Lizzie recalled the first time she saw Wuxia. At that time, she had already heard of Wuxia's various misdeeds. When they first met, she was actually afraid. She was afraid that he would be like the people who bullied her before, and become her new nightmare. But this time, the girl was completely wrong. Wuxia's doting towards her was far beyond Ai Lizzie's imagination. Ai Lizzie had never had siblings, but from what she knew, even siblings of the same mother wouldn't be able to do this, let alone an adopted child like her. Was there a purpose? Ai Lizzie had thought about it seriously before. She had also eavesdropped on the servants' discussions, and the only conclusion she got was that this body was passable. Was it? Was it a body? If that was the case, then it didn't matter. Ai Lizzie, who yearned for affection, thought so. For Luoya, who had been the best to her in her life, entrusting her body to him didn't seem like a big deal. It was more like a reasonable reward. Ai Lizzie didn't know much about the matters between men and women due to her age, but she knew that Akat's family was withering. What she needed to do in the future was probably to give birth to Luoya's children. Somehow, he felt that it was not bad. If she could stay by his side forever, if she could be happy forever, Ai Lizzie felt that it was completely acceptable. After tasting happiness and love, she could no longer bear the pain and loneliness of the past. Therefore, she made up her mind and lived happily with Luoya every day. She felt that this kind of happiness would continue forever. However, the nightmare suddenly arrived. Brown, who had once bullied her, reappeared in front of her and brought her back to hell. At this time, Luoya appeared again. He reached out his hand and broke the thorns around Ai Lizzie, pulling her out of the darkness. On the night that Luoya was unconscious, Ai Lizzie stubbornly stayed by her bedside. That night, she thought a lot and changed a lot. Something fiery started to grow in her heart and started to burn uncontrollably. It burned her body, burned her thoughts, and almost set her on fire. This was probably what adults meant by love. This was what the girl thought that night. If Ai Lizzie's feelings for Luoya before were equivalent to accepting an exchange, then Ai Lizzie now wanted to give. This was the inevitable manifestation of true love. Body, heart, feelings. Everything Ai Lizzie wanted to give to the person she loved the most. This kind of impulse was hard to control, so she couldn't help but confess. She also received the response she imagined. That moment was the happiest moment in Ai Lizzie's life. Originally, Ai Lizzie should have been satisfied with this, but during her conversation with Luoya, some things made Ai Lizzie seriously think about it. That was the follow-up problem, and the future of Akat's family. Luoya forbade Ai Lizzie from blaming herself, but it was also a fact that the Akat family was at odds with Count Eric's family because of her. In addition, Luoya had already replaced her as the new target of the Eric family. Ai Lizzie had heard from Dia that Luoya's extraordinary abilities were likely to be very limited. In the future, it was very likely that he wouldn't even be able to obtain an origin substance. Originally, he should have kept a low profile and continued to spread his family. But because of Ai Lizzie, he had resolutely become the archenemy of the Eric family. He had walked into the whirlpool of power struggles and put himself in danger. Luoya wanted Ai Lizzie to stop blaming herself. But how could the girl do that under these circumstances? If it was the Ai Lizzie of the past, she probably would have treated Luoya optimistically and secretly cried when no one was around. However, the current Ai Lizzie wanted to make a different choice because she had also changed because of this incident. She had gained an epiphany when she had held that blade. Ai Lizzie's cowardice had been washed away in that moment. She had used her own hands to protect the people important to her and obtained the future she wanted. She had also understood one thing. Happiness had to be grasped by oneself. In the past, she had waited numbly and fortunately received the happiness that Luoya had given her. Now, however, she wanted to control her own destiny and personally grasp the happiness that belonged to the two of them. And this wasn't impossible. Luoya's situation wasn't unprecedented. There were quite a few extraordinary families like Akat's that had experienced a lapse in their generation. There were many ways to deal with this situation. Usually, they would marry more and have more children. However, if they were facing a powerful enemy, then having a powerful partner was often the best choice. Chapter 50. It's time to change something. The black-haired boy's eyes lit up as he stroked the neatly arranged boxes of gold coins on the table. In the past few days, Luoya had made a fortune. Since yesterday morning, which was the second day after the incident, carriages and horses had gathered outside the Akate family's labyrinth. One by one, the nobles rushed to this usually feared mansion and sorrowfully asked about the situation of Luoya and Ai Lizzie. These people weren't vassals of the Akate family, nor were they friends of Dia. They all had a common identity, which was that they were the parents of the members of Brown's gang. The incident of Brown's gang had now become a big deal. Although the leader, Brown, had been killed by Earl Bryan, they were still discussing how to deal with the group of youths who followed Brown. Not every family was as cold-blooded as the Eric family. Most of the nobles were willing to pay the price for their children, and there were even a few families who didn't know about the Eric gang. Now that the incident had been exposed, these nobles were shocked, but they were also trying to find a way to make up for it. After all, the Akate family's young master didn't beat them up for nothing. Something big was going to happen, even if their own children were in a worse state. Therefore, since yesterday, various families have been fighting to pay for the medical expenses. Of course, those who performed well couldn't avoid acting out the drama of crying and blaming themselves, and swearing to the heavens that they would break their children's legs when they returned. However, Luoya didn't think it was necessary. He thought about it seriously, and felt that the legs of the people who fought with him had already been broken. In the past, these guys used to follow the Eric family. Now, not only did the Eric family lose a son, their reputation was also greatly damaged. It could be said that this was the golden time for poaching. Under such circumstances, Heathcliff and the Akate family decided to divide and disintegrate the enemy's forces. Luoya could be said to have inadvertently created a breakthrough, causing the power of the Eric family to fall rapidly. As for the things sent over, Ka Dia waved his hand and directly handed them over to Luoya and Ai Lizi. Luoya was overjoyed when he heard his father's decision. He didn't expect that his father didn't go through the traditional procedure of deducting his red packet money. One must know that Luoya didn't lack anything, but in fact he was lacking in gold. The system was really a gold pig. Yesterday, Luoya noticed that the system activated again. The first battle in anger. In a dark room, a cold blade used to defend the righteousness in your heart. 30% discount for the entire event area. Silver wings to liberate. You have released the silver bird from its cage. It will spread its wings and fly. Nothing can stop it. 40% discount for the entire event area, stackable. Originally, Roha was very disdainful when he saw the 30% discount, but when he saw the 40% discount, his whole body was filled with excitement. 40%, it is to give it. Even the monthly discount was 50%. Damn it, I'll buy it. Luoya clicked on the so-called special event area and received another surprise. There were actually a lot of things this time. There were only 2 items per month, but this time, there were actually 10 items. Unfortunately, because it was a special event, the duration was a little short, only a week. Even so, Luoya was very happy because he happened to have money. The nobles were very generous in order to get their families out of this mess. The small ones ranged from a few hundred to a few thousand gold coins. In total, Luoya received more than 10,000 gold coins. However, this wasn't the end. One of Luoya's old friends came to see him again. It was President Alvin, who made a meritorious contribution to the acquisition of the Requiem lamp. It had been a few months since Alvin was promoted to the president of the Holy Capital headquarters in St. Maester. He had just finished his work when he heard that something big happened at the princess' birthday banquet. Through Sorofia's news network, he quickly learned the details of the matter. He hurriedly came to see Luoya with all kinds of healing medicines, tonics, and gold coins. Luoya was not only a benefactor to him, but he was also an important partner in the future. If something bad happened to him, he wouldn't be able to get anything good from the Akate family. As for what he did, what would the Eric family think? It was none of his business. Anyway, he was a Rosetta, and Sorofia was his master. Even if the Eric family didn't like him, there was nothing they could do. Luoya personally got up to meet this middle-aged businessman, who had a good relationship with him. The two of them felt very close to each other. The conversation improved their friendship, and at the same time, Luoya inquired a lot of information. The Eric family? Well, young Master Luoya, you also know that there are some things that can't be disclosed in Sorofia's rules. Is there anything you can disclose? Tell me, anything about Earl Eric's family. Well, Earl Eric's family? Let me think. Chapter 51. What was the key to a family's development and strength? There were many answers to this question. But if one had to be chosen, it would be the governance of the territory. The governance of the territory was the source of a family's prosperity, because even if the family members were extraordinary geniuses, they still had to rely on the taxes collected from the governance of the territory. If their governance was muddle-headed, then the quality of life of the people in the territory would decline. If they were cruel, then the people would migrate. If they performed well, then the refugees would settle down. Therefore, to measure whether a lord was qualified or not, the increase or decrease of the population was the best reflection of the problem. And this was one of the things that Sorophia investigated. But how to investigate? She couldn't count them one by one, right? Sorophia's method to solve this problem was to calculate the statistics of commodities, which was indispensable to everyone's life. But most people had to buy it from merchants. Salt. People couldn't not eat salt. This was caused by their physiological structure, especially in this era, where most people were engaged in manual labor. If they didn't eat salt, they would have no strength at all. Earl Eric's territory is not a salt producer. All the salt has to be bought from merchants and sold to the people, so we are very confident in this data. There will never be a major mistake. According to our analysis, the total amount of salt purchased by the Earl's territory has been slowly increasing over the past few decades. It is basically the same as an area without war. From this data, although the governance of the Earl's territory is good, it is still average. Normally, under such circumstances, Earl Eric's family should be ordinary, but the reality is that Earl Eric's family has risen strongly in the past few decades and once again became one of the top 5 families. They have a great influence on the nobles of the entire theocracy, even surpassing the Akkad family, which is completely opposite to your prediction. Yes, that's why I said it's strange. Arvin showed a puzzled expression, and Luoya was also a little silent. The rise of a family doesn't need to talk about other things, but it needs more money. Earl Eric's territory hasn't improved for many years, so where did the money come from? Although the head of the Eric family isn't extraordinary, I haven't heard of any secret methods to make money. It's better to say that they are all very low-key, but their forces are indeed constantly expanding. In summary, young Master Luoya, I think you should be more careful. The black-haired boy nodded with a solemn expression after listening to his reminder, which was rare for him to be serious. Thank you for your kindness, President Alvin. I will be careful. Apart from these, can you think of anything else? Well, I've only read the internal report. How about this? I'll go back and look through Eric's family records. Maybe I can find something new. Great, I'll pay the right price. Haha, there's no need. As long as you have something that you can't keep at home, you can come and sell it to me. I'll be so happy that I'll wake up from my sleep. Luoya smiled bitterly when he heard the middle-aged merchant's words. He thought to himself that if there was really no other way, he could sell some exquisite items from the favorability exchange area to him. After chatting for a while, Alvin left. After that, Luoya went to Kadia to find out more about the Eric family. He didn't expect Kadia to give him an internal Eric family research report, which refreshed Luoya's understanding of his family. In the past, the Akkad family had lived in a mansion filled with servants, so he couldn't feel it. However, in reality, the Akkad family's military prowess was quite good. Not only did they have their own regular army, but they also had a militia of over 3,000 people. Furthermore, they also had a specialized spy agency. Their combat prowess was one of the best among the 5 great nobles. That's right, each of the 5 noble families was like a small independent kingdom, and their system was a standard model of the Middle Ages. Heathcliff had the absolute advantage of faith in the human world, and had the greatest strength, so it was the common master of everyone. The daily life of the theocracy was actually the nobles arguing in front of the royal family. Eric used to be the second overlord under the king. Unfortunately, he stood on the wrong side during the war more than 100 years ago. When it came to the war between the aristocrats, there was an unwritten rule, and that was that the whole family could not be wiped out. The aristocrats were elegant, and so were the wars. If they couldn't win, they could surrender and pay a ransom. If they won, they had to leave the other side alive. Unless there were very special circumstances, they couldn't kill the other side. This was like a covenant that all the aristocrats signed at birth. The purpose was to preserve each other's heritage to the greatest extent. Anyone who broke the rule would be boycotted by all the aristocrats, because no family could last forever. Just like the War of the Twins more than 100 years ago, Eric still had 10,000 soldiers under his command. Furthermore, they had chosen the wrong side to follow Prince Vader, and had not directly raised the flag of rebellion. Therefore, the royal family at that time had pushed them to the border, and that was pretty much the limit. Another important rule written in the code was that the aristocrats couldn't command beyond their rank. As the common master, the royal family could command the 5 aristocrats and their own aristocrats. This was reasonable and legal. However, if it was a viscount under Eric, that was absolutely not allowed. Doing so was trampling on the dignity of the Lord, and would be boycotted by all the aristocrats. Everyone was just looking for a big brother to be the judge, not to be dismembered. If the big brother really dared to use a knife to tear them apart, they could just run away if they couldn't beat him. Wouldn't it be better to take the territory and look for a new big brother? Because of this, it was difficult to find out the exact military strength of the aristocratic families. According to the research report of the Ackett family, the size of Eric's army had been slowly increasing in the past few decades. This wasn't a big deal. After all, the total population was also increasing. However, what was interesting was that there were more and more mercenaries in their territory. Although Eric territory was located at the intersection of 3 countries, and there was a circle of small countries nearby, it was a good place for mercenaries to make money. However, who among these people were real mercenaries, and who were just pretending to be mercenaries? This was still up for discussion. Regarding this point, the Ackett family's report could only estimate the number of mercenaries, and there was no way to verify it. Luoya understood this, and after reading the report, he became completely vigilant. When Luoya looked at the system's promotion again, his mentality was completely different. The strange situation of the Eric family's inexplicable rise gave him a bad feeling. His current goal had changed from high combat strength to a means of survival. Leveling up could be done in the future, but people couldn't live in the future. Luoya was very clear about his goal. Everything he had done so far was for survival. Chapter 52. 9 out of 10 things in life didn't go your way, but there were a few that were especially hard to bear, such as his father getting married, and his adopted sister getting married. Mr. Luoya was only 10 years old, but he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. He had seen the beautiful world of socialism, and experienced the extravagant lifestyle of the feudal nobility. On the outside he looked like a cute little boy, but on the inside, he had the mentality of a 40-year-old father. So when Ai Lizzie said that she was starting to cultivate as a bride, Luoya was dumbfounded. He had even forgotten that Ai Lizzie still needed to get married. The world Luoya lived in wasn't like the modern world. Due to diseases, wars, and other factors, the human world's population hadn't reached saturation, or rather, it was in a state where there was a huge shortfall. Under such circumstances, countries naturally encouraged more children, and the theocracy, as the ideological tower of the human world, had even written the idea of having more children in their teachings. So the people of this world married at a very young age. It was a bit like the Middle Ages in Luoya's previous life. Commoners became mothers at 14 or 15, and it was normal for commoners to become mothers at 17 or 18. Nobles could get married a little later, but most of them were already married and had children at the age of 17 or 18. As for those who were over 20, they were considered old maidens. In Luoya's previous life, they were considered old leftovers. Of course, this was the standard for commoners. It was a different standard for extraordinaries. Since extraordinaries' bodies were greatly altered by magic, their lifespan would be increased or decreased by varying degrees, so they couldn't be lumped together. But even so, many people were already grandfathers by the age of 50. In this strange world, having a prosperous family wasn't a burden at all. It was actually a good thing. Every additional member was an additional contribution. At the very least, the fertility rate would increase. According to probability, there was a higher chance of producing an SSR. This was especially true for aristocratic families with few members. If they had a stallion head, they would have to pray for Xia's blessing. The reason was simple. The more ancient a noble family was, the lower their fertility rate. It wasn't that there was a problem with the ancient family's abilities. In the end, it was a problem with the system, or rather the rules. To put it simply, there was no freedom to love. Everything was decided by the parents and arranged by the matchmaker. It was a proper transaction marriage. This kind of situation was very common among the nobles in this world. Before the couple got married, they might have only danced once at the banquet. This kind of marriage with zero foundation was quite metaphysical. Some families would first fall in love with each other after forming a family, and the two would unexpectedly get along well with each other. Naturally, they would be able to obtain happiness. However, other than these dogs, most families were barely able to hold on, and some even completely broke down between husband and wife. The fertility rate was naturally not high. What Luoya was worried about was that Dia would give the young Ai Lizzie such a thing. Ai Lizzie was about to turn 8 years old. Logically speaking, it was time for her to think about this aspect and make arrangements early. Dia adopted her in the beginning with the intention of giving her a good background and helping her find a good husband. Now that Ai Lizzie had begun to cultivate as a bride, could there be rumors in this regard? Luoya was worried about two unrelated matters. For a moment, he was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Send Ai Lizzie out? How could that be? Without Ai Lizzie, this grandpa sucks. Cough. Where would this grandpa's favorability come from? Besides, who would he give it to? The black-haired young man slammed the bed as he thought of this, and gritted his teeth in anger. No, definitely not. Letting Ai Lizzie get engaged to those nobles. Wouldn't that be sending a lamb to the tiger's den? If you ask me, there aren't many nobles who are good, except for me. Luoya, who had removed himself from the ranks of the corrupt nobles, spoke righteously. Once again, he was determined to use all means possible to keep Ai Lizzie by his side. He also made the decision to use all means possible to prevent Ai Lizzie from getting engaged to him. Wait, let's not talk about Ai Lizzie for now. Don't tell me I have such a thing on me as well. Luoya, who was thinking about political marriage, began to think deeply. Then he shook his head and laughed. How could that be? Haha, if you did, how could I not know? With a face full of smiles, Luoya continued to think about how to keep Ai Lizzie in the Akat family. On the other side, in front of the entrance, the carriage with the family emblem of the Holy Winged Shield had already stopped. Every time you see me, your face is so stiff. Why do you hate me so much? In the guest hall, Nuwa greeted with a smile. She gave an appropriate evaluation of Luoya's stiff smile. The young man who was smiling out of politeness heard this, and his stiff expression slowly faded away. This is a misunderstanding. You are the one and only princess of the Saint Mestre Empire. Many people want to see you but can't. It is my honor to have you take the initiative to visit me. The black-haired young man leaned on the sofa and said with perfect etiquette. He copied Elisa's "Keep Your Distance" template and did his best to distance himself from Noelle. Miss Angel thought for a moment and said with a little disappointment, "Don't worry. I originally thought that our relationship would be closer after saving you. Looks like I was thinking too much." The golden-haired girl lowered her eyes slightly, and the elegant smile on her face that had almost never changed faded a little. A kind of pitiful temperament that was completely different from the past began to spread rapidly. Her lowered eyebrows revealed a little bit of frustration and helplessness, as if all the words and actions that hurt her were a sin. I'm convinced. Can you not be like this? Luoya looked at Nuwa with a headache. Now that he thought about it, Miss Angel did save him. If she didn't stop the Brown gang for 2 minutes, Luoya might have broken a few bones. In the current situation, to put it in a more elegant way, Luoya was a person with a mature mind. Naturally, he couldn't continue to be ungrateful. Nuwa, thank you for your help. Favorability plus 100. The young man blushed as he expressed his gratitude with difficulty. Nuwa returned to normal after hearing his words. She walked to a chair and sat down with proper etiquette. After thinking for a while, she said, "Although I saved you that time, I should be the one thanking you. As people of the same age, the younger generation of the theocracy should be under my command and name. However, because I wasn't in the holy capital for a long time and spent too much time training with the knights, my influence was reduced." This allowed Eric to take advantage of the situation and create the young gang, which eventually led to this situation. Nuwa didn't hide her dereliction of duty at all. Her magnanimous attitude made Luoya feel ashamed. As the saying goes, if a gentleman treats a gentleman with sincerity, a gentleman can only repay with his own body. Although Luoya didn't feel that he was Nuwa's subordinate, he couldn't help but change his mind. I should close the distance between me and her a little more. Chapter 53. Luoya felt that as a man, it was inappropriate for a girl like Nuwa to shoulder all the responsibility. What Nuwa said before was what he should have done. Originally, Nuwa, Brown, and Luoya were divided into 3 families. However, due to various reasons, the 2 families neglected each other. In addition, the Eric family had ulterior motives, which led to this young men's party. After thinking about this problem, he couldn't help but start to comfort Nuwa. "Actually, I am also responsible for this matter. If I didn't get sick last year, things wouldn't have turned out like this. This isn't your negligence alone, so you don't have to blame yourself." Luoya's words didn't get the response he expected. The boy waited for 2 seconds and looked at the girl with a puzzled expression. What's wrong? Why aren't you talking?" "No, nothing. I'm just a little surprised that you would comfort me. I'm just telling the truth." Nuwa's blue eyes looked deeply at the boy and started to feel puzzled. Luoya's behavior always had a strange contradiction. Through various signs, he didn't hate Nuwa and even thought highly of her. However, there was always a strange sense of alienation. Why did he feel this way? What was the reason? Favorability plus 100 intro right. Where's AI Lizzie? I thought she would be here to accompany you. Did she go to rest? Noelle looked around and casually asked this sentence. She didn't expect Roja to be silent. After a long time, the youth squeezed toothpaste and said, "AI Lizzie went to the housekeeping class. I didn't ask for the details." Ha 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 ha. Thinking about the so-called bride training, Luoya let out a forced laugh. Nuwa was slightly puzzled. From an outsider's point of view, AI Lizzie was super fond of Luoya. Why would she throw him aside for some housekeeping class? Wait, when I passed by the courtyard, there was a weak and repeated curse reaction in the room at the southwest corner. So that's why. Is that girl practicing? The blonde girl pondered and suddenly understood. She looked at the lonely Luoya and shook her head. Forget it. It's better for the person involved to say it himself. It's not tactful to overstep my boundaries, and it's not good for me. Nuwa looked at Luoya like a hawk staring at its prey. In the next moment, his body trembled and quickly returned to his normal state. No, it's too early to indulge in desire. Sigh, I really want to step on him and make him show a pleading expression. Is this the feeling of sinners before they commit atrocities? Nuwa stared at Luoya, who noticed her gaze and became more and more vigilant. She felt that Luoya was really sent to seduce her to commit a crime. It could also be Shiya's test for her. In short, every time she saw Luoya, her desire to bully him would erupt. You to me are really a dangerous thing. What? Luoya panicked when he realized that Nuwa was staring at him with a red face, and her gaze was becoming more and more strange. He was still recuperating, and Nuwa was an entire source level higher than him. If this sadist suddenly acted up, he would be at her mercy. Miss Nuwa, control yourself. Haven't you always been like this? You can do it now. I believe in you. It's obviously because of you that I became like this. How dare you say that? How the hell did I seduce you? Tell me I'll change. Luoya, who was inexplicably called a slut, was so angry that his face turned red. Miss Angel's eyes became more and more watery. She got up and leaned over. She reached out her hand and gently stroked the boy's chest. An ambiguous expression appeared on her face. What about the thing I said before? Have you considered it? Wow, what thing? The itchy feeling on his chest made Luoya's body a little stiff. He braced himself and asked. Nuire smiled. Of course it's to follow me. How about being my subordinate in the future? Be with me every day. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.